So found a few more videos I want to react to. Gonna check them out. Um, just see how we, anything interesting. The first one is gonna be is it time for random dungeon finder in classic WoW? I I don't know. Honestly, this one could go because I think the people by now, well, actually, I don't think it's time for it. I think once ICC comes out and it's been out for a little bit, then maybe introduce a raid, the dungeon fighter. I'm not really sure, or maybe have the dungeon fighter only for Nax. Because obviously the people who are gonna do it, or find guilds to do it, have done that already. So at least that's my thought on it.
So, is it
Let's see
time
it.
for random dungeon finder in classic World of Warcraft? I don't know. We'll see. Here we go. Let's watch this. Yeah, watch this one instead.
What is up, guys? Stay safe here. Classic Wrath has been on a bit of a decline for the last 2 months now.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Obviously.
Seeing fewer and fewer players appearing on Warcraft log uploads since about early November. Now, obviously the holidays have been going on and people are busy in real life.
I love how, like, all these classic players are spouting doom and gloom about classic WoW, even though the reality is that, of course, the fucking numbers are going down. Nax has been out for like 3 months. Everybody's done it like 15 times by now. Like, holy shit, now
Nax
what?
is also like one of the easiest
of
raids.
course.
Or they're traveling, they're out of town. Dragonflight came out, which definitely took a big bite out of Classic Wrath for a little while at least. And most notably, people are just bored of raiding Tier 7 content for 4 months straight now, especially when
I don't know about
Rammus
bored,
is a
but they
re-release
got
of a
what they
raid
needed out
that
of
a
it.
lot of us here were farming just 18 months ago at the end of Classic Vanilla.
Well, also, it was fucking easy back in the day, too. Like, Nax was never the appeal of classic WoW. I mean, like, and also, I will say that I think Gold War is going to have way less numbers than classic Nax did. Like,
Yeah.
Old War is going to be a reckoning for all of those dad guilds that like to just get together and fucking get drunk and kill Kel'Thuzad. You're not going to be able to do that shit with Algalon.
But amidst all of this, you're starting to see a growing sentiment amongst the community. We want RDF, which is Random Dungeon Finder, of course.
Yeah.
If you check the official Classic Wrath
It
forums,
does make sense.
you'll notice that half of the
Like I said, I think it's fine to release Nax's raid finder, and then Old War. I don't think they should even have one for Old War. Just gonna be honest. I think just Nax. Like I can't maybe Trial of the Crusader, but that's about it.
top threads in the last month are requests for RDF. So there's definitely...
Well, I think the problem is also, like, people play on dead servers. And, like, if you play on a dead server,
Yeah.
Random Dungeon Finder is way more important. Because it's super hard to find groups. Whereas if you're playing on a super big server where there's always groups popping off, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
somewhat of a shared sentiment being expressed here that people want RDF in the game.
I didn't
now.
even think about that, to be honest.
Now, if I'm going to be completely honest, I was one of the people strongly against RDF during Classic Wrath's launch period. But 4 months
Well, that's good. I mean, like, I think everybody, like, this, in my opinion, was always the take that you should have had for classic Random Dungeon Finder. Not on release, but whenever it feels right.
Yeah,
I think that's what makes the most sense.
exactly.
later, I think it's time to open
Because I think if it released on release, like a lot of guilds that are a thing just wouldn't be a thing if it came out on release.
up that discussion again. Features like RDF are comparable to tools at Blizzard's disposal, and
Right.
different projects necessitate different tools, right? The state of Classic Wrath today is very different than the state of Classic Wrath during its launch period around 4 months ago. Because now you're seeing fresh level 80 players having a really hard time getting into heroic groups because very few people actually need heroics now. But more notably,
That's true.
you're seeing that it is
But is
almost
there that
impossible to
many
find
new
a dungeon
players?
group while leveling through vanilla or TBC content, or even low level.
Yeah, they should have had Random Dungeon Finder for TBC and vanilla dungeons on day one. They should have added that in for the pre-patch. Like the pre-patch for Wrath of the Lich King. Because like if you want to go and do Scarlet Monastery in your alliance,
I mean, it's a
this
dungeon.
is just
Does it really
realistically
matter?
not going to happen if you don't have random dungeon finder, because the opportunity cost of riding all the way over there and then riding all the way back, doing the quests, doing multiple runs of the dungeon, this is just not going to happen. So you either have random dungeon finder or the content is dead on arrival. Like it's not dead on arrival, it's dead
Practically
effectively
dead.
at this time and place.
Yeah.
Wrath of the Lich King content, especially if you
Content
don't
not being
play
used.
at the peak hours of the day.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously how it works. I mean, again, like some people, like this guy in chat, he says, what's this here? Oh, fuck. Wait, what the fuck? No, traveling is the fun part? But it's not, though, because
It's
if it was,
not
then
for most people,
wouldn't want this.
I would say.
So, like, that's obviously, like, not true. Like, nobody wants to just run there. And it's like, maybe it was the fun part the first time in 2006, but now it's 2022. You've leveled 7 characters. You don't want to run to Scarlet Monastery and get killed by the fucking 55 elite
So it
guards.
was fun the first time.
You want to do it. It's a waste of your fucking time. You just want to do the dungeon and move on. 23? Yeah, 23. Never mind.
Or if you're running
So
with
at this
friends,
point,
then
now
maybe
that launch is
it's
over,
fine,
we're 4
but
months into
even
Classic
then.
Wrath, and we're looking forward to Old War. Would it ruin the game to introduce RDF so that fresh players or more casual players could easily get into some dungeon groups
Yeah,
for
it'd be
leveling,
fine.
or after just hitting level 80?
At this point,
Honestly, I don't think so. There's a time and a place for everything, and I think we're just about at the time where we can think about introducing RDF.
I think that, like, you don't actually need random dungeon finder, but you need one of these two things. You either allow people to make groups from any server. So, like, for example, you can go and...
like the pre-made groups. If that's what he's talking about, which I think it is, like how retail has the pre-made groups where you can post, your group, what you're looking for. Like, I actually think that would be better than the normal raid finder. Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
you group up with anybody and you can play cross-server, or
Yep.
you have random dungeon finder. Because the fact is, we actually don't have random dungeon finder in retail WoW, and it works perfectly. Because realistically, nobody is doing heroic dungeons. Everybody's doing Mythic and Mythic Plus. Even
Yep.
if they're doing Mythic at all, they're doing Mythic 0 or Mythic Plus 2 or something like that. So everybody has already moved beyond random dungeon finder, but it works in retail WoW because you have all the servers that are connected and both factions can play with each other. In Classic WoW, neither of those things are true. So you need to either do that or add random dungeon finder, because it might seem like I don't want to do this because it's going to take away from what Classic is like. That's very easy for a person who's on a high population server to say, but the truth is that there's a lot of people that aren't on those high pop servers that are, maybe on like a high pop server, but they're the 20% faction rather than the 80% faction. And these people are not able to play the game and enjoy the game. That is not a good thing. They are not getting the experience that they are supposed to get. And so you either let people do cross-realm or you have random dungeon finder.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah, and the more it happens, the more it snowballs out of control. Like, it's just how it is. I mean, obviously it won't get to a point where it closes out Classic, but you're going to see way more people leaving than, if you had the systems in there, they wouldn't have left.
But of course, please let me know what you think about this RDF topic. I know this is a controversial topic especially, so please drop a comment and let me know how you feel in the comments down below. And hey, while you're down there, please drop a like, please subscribe, and go find me on Twitch. All the links are down there in the description of the video. But anyway, as always, guys, thank you for watching, and stay safe.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear what people have to say about this in the comments, because I definitely think that random dungeon finder, it probably could be the time. I feel like they probably should add random dungeon finder. It might be... I think random dungeon finder has nothing to do with why Classic WoW isn't doing well right now. I think it's because Old War isn't out. If Old War was out, it's...
The content's already kind of dry at this point, because you got to remember, I mean, these are... A lot of Classic WoW players, they did play that game when it came out, so they know to a degree, like the raids and stuff. And a lot of Classic WoW players are people who will look up guides. And maybe that's a hard one. I'm like thinking about that for a second. I was like, I probably shouldn't say that. but it's also okay. Like the raid is just so much easier, so that a lot of people did it. They got all their gear. It doesn't take that long. It takes like what, a month and a half to get like everything, unless you're like really unlucky. So it's like, okay, well, what next? Like I did the raid to what I can do it to. I think they should release raids a little quicker, but it's hard to say. I think once Older comes out, that's when we're really going to see is the raid finder actually necessary?
It's not
Because if not many people are playing it, then fine.
power come, guys. Okay, there's a G here. It's not a G. Guy. Okay, all right. Yeah. Okay, let me see. This is Stay
I didn't
Safe
even
video.
notice
Make
that.
sure to
That's
give it a
funny.
like. We love Stay Safe. We've watched his videos for years. Years and years and years. People just power level anyway. Exactly. So I think that really it's just because more raiding content isn't out. I think that Random Dungeon Finder should be added halfway through
Yeah.
Old War or whenever Trial of the Crusader comes out. That's whenever it seems like it makes sense for me for Random Dungeon Finder to come out. That's it. I want Random Dungeon Finder for Mythic Plus. No, you don't.
I think low level mythics it might be okay, but like nothing above 10. Like even maybe 5, it's kind of pushing it.
Yeah, definitely you don't.
Unless it was like item level based, then maybe up to 10. But even then, like it's hard to say because it's a lot more mechanics involved.
Yeah, people are full bis and tired of Nax. Yeah, there's no rewards for them to go after, so they stop playing the game.
Exactly.
I think if there's a Random Dungeon Finder, I would play even more heroics. To be honest, I don't even do my daily heroics because it's so tedious to look for a group of the tool that we have now. Well, yeah, because the Random Dungeon Finder does everything for you. You click the button, it puts you in a group, and it also summons you to the dungeon. And it gives everybody a 15% buff whenever they're in the dungeon. So yeah, no fucking surprise.
Actually,
Everybody is going to
that.
want Random Dungeon Finder because it's massively advantage. It's massively
that's right.
an
That's right.
advantage.
I actually do
Of
remember
course,
now.
man. It's common sense. Spamming heroics with Random Dungeon Finder as a tank was fun to fuck and fast. Yeah, it was. I did the same thing, man. And yeah, do factions even add anything to the game? In Wrath, back in the day, they did. Nowadays, factions are more of an arbitrary barrier than they are any sort of like a value add.
Yeah, most people don't give a crap if you're Horde or Alliance. Like it's just you just want to play the game.
Or an improvement on the game. But back in the day, yes, factions absolutely were an improvement. 100%. Give me 1 second. Let me actually respond to something.
Well, it's a good video. Is it time? Like I would agree with Asman. I don't think so. Like I said, like once Old Year comes out and see how that plays out, see kind of how the players are tackling it, and if almost no one's able to kind of get it done, it feels like less and less people are raiding, then add it in. But and not for Old Year. I'm just saying. Maybe once Old Year has been cleared for like quite a while, then maybe. But even then, I don't think many people will be okay with it because Old Year is like just way, way, way harder than Nax. So good video. Let's see. I think that's really all there is. Classic's a weird animal, that's for sure. All right. Gonna jump around between WoW and other stuff. So next video we're gonna be watching. A major Elden Ring announcement is coming, but did I react to this already? I might have. If I did, we'll find out. Like, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Let's just take a look at the video here.
Major Elden Ring announcement coming.
Alright, what's going on, guys? This is a video I've been meaning to make for a little bit, but I wanted to wait until after
I think it's the
Christmas
same
just to
guy as
confirm
the
something.
PvP video.
It is inevitable that we're going to get more of Elden Ring. We recently just had the Coliseum update that I was telling you guys all along was going to come out before the end of the year.
It's so crazy that they brought out the Coliseum update for free. They just said, hey, yeah, by the way, we're bringing this out, and it's free. You can play it right now. There you go.
Yeah.
That was so badass.
Like the PvP enjoyer that I am,
I was a bit
super
disappointed
hyped
with
about that. But there is a
the amount of
reality
maps
that update did not satisfy the majority of players. And regardless of how you feel about that, the majority of Elden Ring players are here for the PvE. And we have a dilemma.
That's true.
With the recent announcement of Armored Core 6 coming in 2023, we have a large contingent of From Software fans that are feeling a bit disenfranchised by the recent pattern. The players that are not interested in Elden Ring PvP and are also hesitant to get excited for or try Armored Core before, today I want to offer you some hope because
They're
we
very
have
different
confirmation that
games.
big things are coming, and I'm going to get you.
I think that like whenever you buy a game, like you can't really buy a game and expect them to make DLC for it. For example, like Sekiro never got DLC. I think everybody was expecting like the Tomoe, like the character like Ishin talks about, and like the Lightning Girl.
Yeah.
Like it's like she's referenced in the lore, and everybody thought like, oh well, they're gonna do a DLC with her, but like that just never happened. Like you just because you buy a game doesn't mean you're entitled for them to make more content. I wish it was like that. That'd be great. I'd love to see more Elden Ring content. But if you buy the game, you get what you pay for. I think that's what's fair.
I don't think entitlement is the right word. I think it's hope. It's like, man, this is such a good game. Please give me more of this good game. But, I mean, obviously, entitled people, like, in general, are going to be a thing, whether it's gamers or anything else. Like, so I don't, like, I never like to include them into the conversation because it's like, there are entitled people across the board. So,
I think that also, like,
It's not a
this is
gaming
one of
only
the
thing.
outcomes where, like, all these other games are games as a live service, and Elden Ring isn't really a live service game in the same way.
like, when I worked in the casino, there was a lot of people who just, like, assumed they were entitled to win because they lost whatever amount of money they lost. Like, whatever, like, limit they had. Like, no, I lost this, therefore, I deserve to win, and anyone who wins next to me, like, they just hate them. Because it's like, you didn't deserve that.
And I think people just expect games to function as a live service even whenever they're not.
Up to speed on this really
I think that's
important
true for
news
some.
that went under the radar and what you need to be paying attention to going forward. So as we get into that
I think especially true for, like, games like Elden Ring that are very open. Like, it's just very normal for developers to have a lot more DLC for open world games.
today, if you want to stay up to date on all the latest news and discussion around From Software, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button because the future of this company is looking extremely bright and you're not going to want to miss anything. But with all that, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, it's been a minute since the Game Awards.
The Game Awards. That is so funny.
Everybody knows. Yeah, everybody knows. Like,
Elden Ring got the recognition it definitely deserved, but we had a lot going on. Personally, I was not expecting them to announce the Coliseums before the Game Awards, but rather at the Game Awards.
I guess this was an old
However,
one? I
we
don't
did still
know.
get somewhat of a mention of Elden Ring DLC. And between
Maybe
Elden
not.
Ring winning Game of the Year and the debacle with the Bill Clinton kid, you may have forgotten about it.
で、このエルデンリングについてもまだやりたいことありますので、その点でも今回の受賞すごく大きな励みになりました。
As for Elden Ring, we still have several more things we want to do. So getting this Goldie Award really encouraged us.
fucking getting ready
So
for
at
it.
the Game Awards, after receiving the Game of the Year award, Miyazaki confirmed that they're working on several more things for Elden Ring. Now,
That makes sense. I mean, of course, they're probably going to make more stuff for the game. I think that it's actually a good idea for them to move away from making another game that's as good as Elden Ring. I think Elden Ring is one of those
Yeah.
games that, like, whenever you make it, you're like, okay, I'm done. That's it. All right, let's go do something else. Like,
Well, no, I mean, he said, like, it's very close to his ideal game, so I actually think it's the opposite. Where now that they have, I'm assuming, like, way more funding for the next game, is, to go for that ideal. I mean, it could be wrong, but, like, to me, it makes total sense that they would add DLC to Elden Ring. It is a very big open world. There's a lot of assets that can be used. Again, like, they don't have to, like, make whole new stuff. Just because there is so much stuff that it would be hard to, like, you're not going to run into that feeling of, oh, they just used reused assets.
pretty much, like, we got it, and we made the best version of it. Maybe we'll make another one later on, but,
Best
like, let's just
version.
take a break.
it's not the main thing I wanted to talk about, but it does put into context that there is more of this story that they want to tell. And I mean, realistically, if we're being completely honest, that only means one thing: a real full-scale DLC. Now, yes, the
Yeah, I would assume
Coliseums were
so.
technically DLC. However, we all know what you're hoping for: more of the PvE adventure in a full-scale paid DLC. And it looks like that could be coming pretty soon.
I think people want to have harder bosses. A lot of the bosses in Elden Ring, I would argue, except for Moenia, are, like, really... Like, maybe it's just because I've played the games a lot, but they're really easy.
If you make them easy, I mean, you can also make it really hard on yourself. Just don't level. Use a normal sword instead of like an OP weapon. Like, I mean, it's like most Dark Souls games, to be fair. Or at least not most, but like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, your knowledge, like, can really, really help you make the game easy. But then again, you can also make the game really hard just with like knowing what is good and avoiding that. But I think that is a dumb way, like, of doing difficulty. So
Because if you're signed up to the Bandai Namco email list, then you would have received a note that was really interesting. This email reads, Elden Ring wins Game of the Year. Congratulations to Elden Ring for winning Game of the Year, Best RPG, and Best Art Direction at the Game Awards. It's been an incredible year of gaming, and we thank the Elden Ring community for their love and support of the game thus far. States
I think that it's going to be a situation like if they add DLC, I hope it's like the Dark Souls 3 DLC, where
a
like
whole new area.
Gale and Midir, like these are like the hardest bosses in the game. They are, I would say that.
I don't think they will. Like, if I'm going to be just honest, like, I think I understand where Asmon's coming from, but I'm looking at it from like the game developer's end, and I'm just like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense they would do that. Just because Elden Ring is the game that is like their, what's the word I'm looking for? The one that attracted more new players than probably any other FromSoft game. So it's like, I don't think adding a DLC that is for the hardcore player base would be a smart move. I don't know if smart's the right word, but it's like, I just don't see it. Like, maybe like a whole new area and like new bosses. The bosses are, should be harder than the normal Elden Ring bosses. And just have ways of making hardcore players make the game harder for themselves would be, to me at least, like the best choice there. That way it doesn't feel like if you're one of the newer players who, Elden Ring is your first Dark Souls type game, where you just don't feel like you can't do anything in the DLC. Like, you're getting just stomped because they made it for those who have been playing the game since like Demon Souls.
The DLC bosses minus like the Ancient Wyvern are like a large measure of magnitude harder than anything in the base game.
Yeah, and that's what I like. I don't think that was a good idea. From the people who play Dark Souls, like the casual like friends that I know that played it, had the DLC, but only like never beat it, which to me is not a good indicator. Like, that's a bad thing. Like, you want people to beat your game because it makes them excited to play the next one.
Minus, I don't know. I think Nameless King was pretty hard. I think the Twin Prince.
Because if you can't beat a game, you're not going to be interested in the next one. Just almost a guarantee. Like, if you played Dark Souls 1 and rage quitted, you couldn't do it. Like, Dark Souls 2 is not going to hold much of an appeal to you.
Are kind of hard, but...
And I don't mean it like they should make the games easier. Absolutely not. They're Dark Souls games. But what I mean is not to make it so hard that the people who played Elden Ring, beat Elden Ring, are going to, like, run into, like, Margaret, like, without preparing. You know what I mean? Like, it's just going to be, like, you're hitting this crazy wall all of a sudden.
All of those bosses pale in comparison to DLC.
In the days and weeks to come, as there is more Elden Ring news that awaits. For those who have yet to experience Elden Ring, there's no better time than now. I had mentioned that email very, very briefly in one of the last few videos, but I think it's an extremely important piece of news that nobody was really talking about, and there's a lot of context to go along with it. But the obvious standout point of that email was that it said to look out for more Elden Ring news in the days and weeks to come. Now, the obvious problem here is that days and weeks
that would be the Gladiator update now,
which is why I wanted to wait till after Christmas in case they were planning a
700
Christmas
weeks.
announcement. But clearly that didn't happen. So now we can go into a deep dive on this. The only bit of news that we've seen since the Game Awards relating to Elden Ring is that it has gone on sale in time for the holidays. But let me reassure you, that is not what the email was referring to. Because in the line directly after that, they say now is the best time to hop into the game, which they wouldn't say if their news was that it was going to go on sale a few weeks later. But rather...
I mean, you got to remember this is a Japanese company. That could have been just a translation issue. So that's hard to say.
If we compare this to what Miyazaki
Makes
said
sense.
at the Game Awards, Clearly, this is talking about more in-game content. If it was anybody other than Miyazaki saying that, I wouldn't really be inclined to think that it's a full-scale DLC. However, since it is his creative project, whatever they're working on is likely to have more story implications. But let's put this in context for a little bit. We are obviously coming up on the new year, and with the new year comes a lot of business things. The next quarter for the Japanese fiscal year begins on January 1st, and what that means is that on January 2nd, we're going to get the next investors report for Kadokawa, who is the parent company of From Software. In these
I didn't know
reports, we
that.
typically get a good outlook on what they're planning to do in the next quarter and how they view their performance.
Wait, what? Made in Abyss Binary Star. Is that a... I know it's an anime, but do they make a game out of it? Or are they like publishers of the anime? I don't know what this is. AI? Something files? I'm assuming? I don't know what that is.
Performance in the last. Now, as we all know,
That's true. And this is the same thing with the Blizzard reports, is that whenever the Activision Blizzard shareholder reports come out, that tells you more about like how the game is going to evolve than anything else. Because those are the guys
is
that
true.
have the money that make the decisions.
Yeah.
Elden Ring contributed a huge deal to Kadokawa's success in 2022. And after we got
No
that
surprise
first
there.
investors
So.
report after the game release and had such monumental success, they were already discussing ways to have more paid content for this game. So what we can expect in this report is a reflection on the recent success at the Game Awards, as well as talk about ways of making more money off of the game based on that success, which is almost a 100% guarantee. And there's
Well, that's definitely true, because like one thing with Elden Ring is such a massive, expansive game that like adding new content to the game, like new weapons or new types of spells or anything like that, like it has a multiplier effect on
Yeah.
all of the other content of the game, because now
Yeah.
you can go back
And
and
replay.
do all of that other stuff with these new items.
You have the
several
replay
business
value
reasons
just...
of why this would make sense. Of
Gets
course, the
higher and
biggest
higher.
main reason of why they need to push out a DLC for Elden Ring is what I was explaining in the intro to this video. Those disenfranchised fans who won't be picking up Armored Core. Now, personally, I'm super excited to try
I think that most people that play Elden Ring and that are fans of From Software will probably play Armored Core. In the same
Really?
way that they played Sekiro. Sekiro
I don't think so, because Sekiro and Dark Souls actually still kind of has that same vibe. Armored Core does not have that like Dark Souls vibe whatsoever. Maybe the new one will. I haven't really seen too much. I'll try to see if I can find some trailers for it. But I'm not into Armored Core. Just I was into those kind of games back in like middle school, high school-ish area. But like since then, haven't really played a single one. Don't really plan to.
was a very big departure
not my
from the way that their previous games had played.
Wait, what do you say?
the intro to this video. Those disenfranchised fans who won't be picking up Armored Core. Now, personally, I'm super excited to try.
I think that most people that play
think
Elden
I
Ring
went
and
too
that are
far back.
fans of From Software will probably play Armored Core. In the same way that they played Sekiro. Sekiro was a very big departure from the way that their previous games had played.
It played, yes, but not how it looked. And that's going to be the thing. Like, a lot of people get their games based on how they look, not really too much how they play, because you don't really know until you're actually playing it. And even Sekiro doesn't feel that big of a difference until, like, a few bosses into the game. And then it really hits you like, wow, this is like a super parry, like, game. Like, you really, really have to be into parrying to be good at Sekiro. So... yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a good comparison.
And most of them went and they played it. Like, and this is kind of like, this is what happened with Blizzard back.
Because it's even the case where I didn't even know Armored Core was, like, made, I'm assuming made by the same people making Elden Ring. Like, I'll give it a try after finding that out, but I did not know that.
In a day, is that Blizzard had such a good reputation that anything that Blizzard
Exactly.
made, people would try it out. If Blizzard made an MMO, people...
CD Projekt Red is a great example. After The Witcher 3, almost anything they made after would have sold well, but unfortunately they really messed up Cyberpunk,
tried
unfortunately.
it out. Whenever they made Heroes of the Storm, people tried that out. I think people have faith in the developer to make a good game, and I think that having a good game is even more important than having the same genre. Sekiro is still similar. Armored Core is not.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying.
I never played the original Armored Cores, so I would probably say, yeah, you're probably right from like what I've seen, is that, yeah, Armored Core is more different than Sekiro is. But I do think Sekiro is a different game. It is a fundamentally different game. And I think people all bought that one too. All I'm saying is that I think there's a lot of people that are fans of the development studio, and any game that they put out that is a good game, they're going to buy it regardless of like what the specific genre of it is.
Yeah.
Something that isn't a Souls game from Software. However, even based off the video performance on my channel, I can tell there's a lot of y'all that just aren't interested in Armored Core. And that's something they're going to have to make clear to the investors. Armored Core simply is not going to capitalize off the success of Elden Ring. Now, I know Miyazaki and From Software...
To a degree
I
it
don't
will,
think that it will in the same way that like for
Sekiro.
example, if they brought out Dark Souls 4 after this, I think that Dark Souls 4 would obviously capitalize way more off of it
Or
than
than Elden Ring 2.
Armored Core would. But I still do think, obviously, Elden Ring being successful and the studio being successful, like pretty much every single time they bring something out, that does contribute to it. Absolutely.
only care about making games they're passionate about, and that's almost definitely the reason their games are so good in the first place. But the investors are a different animal. They're gonna want a capitalization, one that's going to supplement the lower sales of Armored Core. But then we gotta think about timing, because the next fiscal...
That is a good point, that they would probably, like, yeah, if they're gonna make Armored Core might sell less than Elden Ring, so maybe they'll bring out more Elden Ring DLC to supplement that. Because that's kind of what happened with Dark Souls 2. Is that Dark Souls 2 had like, what was it, 2 or 3 big DLCs? It wasn't just like one thing. So it got changed a lot. Yeah, it was 3? Yeah, I thought it was 3. I knew it was at least 2.
Year doesn't start until April. The chances that Armored Core gets released in the next fiscal year is almost a certainty. I simply can't see that they would release this in the same fiscal year that Elden Ring has blown way past expectations. But if we follow that logic, then that would mean that DLC would also have to release in
I was
that
wondering
fiscal
why it was
year.
putting
And so
the
my theory on when I think
robot
Armored Core is going to release will
trailer.
be later in the year. Since we
Yeah,
didn't get a
I'd agree
release
with
date
that.
with this trailer, only the year 2023. And so if we build off that,
It's
April
December.
sounds like a good time for the paid Elden Ring DLC to release. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that that feels a little bit far off. But as for the announcement, it'll definitely be
I think that the reason why a lot of people are in kind of like a content drought that are big fans of Elden Ring is that there aren't a lot of mods out for Elden Ring. And like,
Yeah.
I think that's different than what a lot of people were used to with Dark Souls 3. Is that Dark Souls 3 had so many different mods to it.
Yeah, but those mods also took a while to come out. It's not like they all instantly just popped out. Like Elden Ring, I think, is going to get there, but it's going to take a while.
That people could go back and play different versions of the game. Like you could go play, the Cinders mod, the Hollow mod, the Convergence mod, and I think those were the 3 main big ones. So as soon as Elden Ring starts seeing more mods come out, I remember seeing the Convergence mod team made actually a tweet recently about like, their development and like their progress on an Elden Ring mod for Convergence. So
Yeah,
I think
that's what
whenever
I was
that
saying.
comes
Like,
out,
it's just a matter
that
of
will
time.
definitely be a good stopgap for a
Elden Ring is a much bigger game than the previous Dark Souls as well, so that might be why it might take a bit longer.
lot of people, especially people that are like hardcore fans of the game.
Yeah.
pretty soon. We have some key dates coming up. Right now is a pretty bad time to make a gaming announcement. November and December are usually super busy. The time when everybody's marketing their games for the holidays, when the most consumer eyes are on the advertising. But once Christmas and the holidays actually hit, most companies end up waiting until after Lunar New Year on January 22nd to make any major announcements. With that being said though, From Software has a
makes
tendency to
sense.
just shadow drop things. with
To be
no
fair, though, I think games in general shouldn't have to worry about that. Just because gamers are going to get, if it's a good game, gamers are going to buy it no matter what time of the year it comes out. I think holidays, it makes sense because you can get it as a gift, but other
rhyme
than
or
that,
reason of prediction, which has happened before. But we also
So
have
almost
the
what happened
1-year
with the-
anniversary of Elden Ring's release on
with the
February
Coliseum.
25th. However, I think the term days and weeks to come doesn't mean that long. But either way, your eyes should be looking out for an
Days and weeks makes me think that it's 2 to 5 weeks.
announcement very soon. But here's what we need to keep in mind. Since Elden Ring won Game of the Year, that guarantees something pretty big. That Elden Ring is going to be remarketed as Game of the Year Edition. And if they're making paid DLC, then they're probably going to wait until after that releases to market that game so that they can include it in the bundle.
That's a really good point. I never thought of that. That's really smart.
I
That was
simply
good.
cannot imagine.
Yeah. All right. How to get the door? Let me.
DLC, then they're probably going to wait until after that releases to market that game so that they can include
Oh,
it
that's
in the
right.
bundle.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I never thought of that. That's really smart.
I simply cannot imagine
I think they did that with Dark Souls 2, if I'm not mistaken, with one of the DLCs.
that won't be something that's demanded
Yeah.
by the investors. And realistically, here's what I think is going on. If I'm being completely honest, I don't think DLC was ever planned for Elden Ring. Aside from the Colosseums, I think they left the idea as a possibility based
I think most games do that, where it's not really planned, but if the game does well enough, why not do DLC with it? Like, leave it open for that option.
on how much unexplored lore and cut content that we have. However, after the
I wouldn't be surprised if they also had DLC planned.
Yeah,
I
they
would not
probably
be
had concept.
surprised, and I don't think it's a big. I think it's something that they might not have really planned for, but they'd still probably want to do because of just how expansive they made the game.
extreme and
Exactly.
unexpected success of the game, they are now forced into a position
There's
where
like
they
a
have
lot
to
more
make it.
opportunities
So
for
what this
DLC
email
in
says to
Elden Ring
me
than the
is that
previous
after
ones.
winning Game of the Year, they are likely now scrambling to make a trailer for the DLC so that they can announce it, or at least announce that it's coming as a way of saying thank you. But
I don't
either
think
way,
they're
I'm very
scrambling.
excited for the next few weeks. I know there's some people that have been kind of down because they don't like PvP or Armored Core. Rest assured, exactly what you want is coming.
Damn,
they
you
have
dodged that
much
shit like
more
a
planned
boss.
for Elden Ring, and although we don't have a specific date yet, all we have to do is just sit back and let them cook, follow the context clues, and await their official announcement.
I think that's really the truth, is that people that get impatient about that, like, chill the fuck out, man. Think about how long it took for Elden Ring to come out. Like, Elden Ring
Yeah.
got announced, and then they just went silent for like a year and a half.
Didn't
And
hear
then
anything.
a little bit after that, it came out, and that was it. So it'll come out when it comes out.
When it's ready.
That investors
Exactly.
report is definitely going to have some details, and I will be covering that for you guys
Yeah,
on
I'm
January
curious
2nd.
about that.
So make sure you're subscribed.
And that's
for
why I
that.
said they
But
weren't
either way, though,
scrambling.
guys, that's
From
gonna pretty
Software
much do it
just,
for the video today.
you know,
I
takes
hope
their
you
time
enjoyed it,
to
and if you did, be sure to
do
leave a
things
like on it.
right.
Let me know down below, what do you think days and weeks to come means? Personally, I'm not exactly sure what to make of it. But with all that, subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll catch you in the next one.
That
He
a
was
good
probably
video.
just
That's some
optimistic.
good insight too. I'm gonna link you guys this. Yeah, we've watched one or two of his videos before from like Elden Ring stuff, and yeah, I think this is very, very insightful, especially with like the fucking the earnings report and all of that. I thought Elden Ring was announced. They didn't say anything for like 3 years. Yeah, they didn't like Elden Ring got announced. I remember looking at this. I reacted to the first Elden Ring video when
I think the only announcement I recall while Elden Ring was in production was that they were going to work with J.R.R. Martin. And that's about it.
it was classic WoW beta. So this is like early 2019. So it was nuts how long ago it was, man. Will you cover any
Yeah.
Wayfinder game content? Yeah. Actually, the developers of that game reached out to me. I didn't follow up with them because this was like, there was like some other bullshit going on at the time. But I probably need to do that in the next couple of days and kind of see where they're at.
That'd be pretty cool. Wayfinder.
And so yeah, that's
I'm
the
definitely
way I
looking
feel
forward to
that
that
way
one.
about it. Like, I mean, I'm excited about that game too. But with I just want to talk about Elden Ring right now. Is that I think they're going to have DLC for Elden Ring because the game was so massively successful. I think the DLC is not going to be as transformative as, let's say, the Lost Hunters or the Old Hunters DLC for Bloodborne was. It's probably not going to be on that level. It's probably just going to be a lot harder bosses. I would say somewhere, like, if it's as good as the Dark Souls 3 DLC, I will be very happy. And I don't.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, a whole new area, some new bosses. I don't really care if they're harder or not. Just more Elden Ring.
I don't think that there's ever been DLC that was like fundamentally bad. Like with Dark Souls 2, the DLC is the saving grace of the game. With Dark Souls 1, it had, I mean, fuck bro, it had Artorias, it had, what's that, the dragon does the Calamity Ring, fuck. I can't believe I can't think of its name.
I have no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, Calamite, yeah, there you go, Calamite. And then Manus, I didn't like the Manus fight, but like the whole...
It's been too long since I played Dark Souls 1. I probably should replay that.
The aesthetic of it was fucking amazing. The Ulasil area. Dark Souls 2, obviously, you know, 3 different DLCs, massively successful, best things about the game. And then with Dark Souls 3, you had the DLC with that too. I was thinking actually about Bloodborne, and I don't remember this because I never used this weapon. Is the whirligig weapon from the DLC or not? You know, that's like the chainsaw type thing.
His chat says yes, but honestly,
it's from the DLC. I thought it was. I just didn't want to go out and say that. Think about how many people got that weapon and then replayed the game because of that weapon. And think about how many people got the dual greatsword, the twin greatswords from Dark Souls 3 and replayed the game because of that.
Exactly.
So that's what the potential of Elden Ring DLC has.
To be fair, Elden Ring, though, is like way bigger. Like, unless the weapon can really fundamentally change the build, I don't think that's going to be enough for a lot of people to replay all of Elden Ring.
Is that it has a potential of multiplying the content in the game for people that are already playing it by creating transformative weapons. So I'm really excited. I hope it's going to be fucking awesome. As you guys know, I have played a lot of these games, and so I'm very...
Okay, I was hearing like this weird static.
Happy to see any of them come out. Yeah, Fume Knight as well. Like Fume Knight, I think Fume Knight was DLC too. I'm like 90% sure Fume Knight was DLC. I'm like 95% sure it was DLC. And let's see. Yeah, it was okay. Yeah, and like that had a cool weapon too. Suge Knight? No, that guy's in jail or something. Pull Bethesda.
I don't really know what
the game every year. I mean, as long as the game has new content, I don't really give a fuck.
But Armored Core isn't going to do as well?
Not as
I'm not sure why he added that to the video.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, a major announcement, I think after playing it, like, you just knew, like, this game's going to blow up. Like, it's way too good not to blow up. And then it went in Game of the Year. So it's like, I don't know. I would honestly I would have been really, really surprised if they didn't release anything like any DLC, because they did it for Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, and Bloodborne. So it's like Sekiro was like the only one they didn't. But that could be just because of how difficult it was. Not many people even beat it. Therefore, DLC wouldn't have done as well. I'm assuming. I have no idea. But yeah, that's a good video. I think it was obvious, so that something was coming even without reading into any emails or anything like that. But yeah. Okay. Next one I want to take a look at is easy content in WoW versus Final Fantasy 14. I'm not sure. Like, I've done a lot of the raids in Final Fantasy 14, and I've done raids in WoW. WoW without mods, I think is just way, way harder. But WoW with mods is way, way easier, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know. At least that's what the feel I got from them. Obviously, I didn't really do, like, mythic raiding, I'll be honest. And I didn't do Final Fantasy's version of it either, which I forget the name of it is. But, yeah, I haven't done, like, the very, very top end of, like, content, so.
In a recent video, I mentioned I feel way more satisfaction doing high-level content in Final Fantasy XIV than in WoW. But I also realized I feel the same way in the easy content. And I think that's an important distinction because way more people are going to experience the easy content. And sometimes easy content is
That
what
is true.
I want.
The reason why WoW content is less fulfilling whenever you complete it is that the majority of the WoW has a lot of mechanics that happen all at the same time, whereas like Final Fantasy has less mechanics that are occurring simultaneously, but each of the mechanics that are occurring simultaneously are incredibly important, very well telegraphed, and if you do them wrong, you will die.
That is true. Yeah.
I know when I'm super stressed from real life stuff like work, I want my gaming to be pretty chill and relaxing.
Yeah, I think that's the same with a lot of
Some
people.
kind of mindless grind or face roll dungeons can be really nice to chill out and just press some buttons.
True and real.
First, what I mean by easy content,
I don't think that's. I mean, I do agree it's true, but I think a lot of times it's not enough because otherwise BDO would be the biggest game out there for casuals.
is content that's meant to be beaten. Normal dungeons,
Yeah.
story scenarios.
Yeah,
LFR,
I think like both games have this content
Questing,
stuff that
yeah.
like it's designed to lose. It's programmed to lose.
wow, Alliance raids in 14. You might wipe once or twice when it's brand new, but it's not made to be a huge obstacle. It's made to be beaten.
Yeah.
What I noticed while leveling different characters in Dragonflight was I found no fun in the normal dungeons. I had fun doing them
Why?
with friends, but that's because my friends were fun, not
Yeah.
because of the dungeon.
Well,
That makes
how do you know? Like, how would you know? Did you have like? Well, that's the case where he did some dungeons with friends and then some dungeons without, and the ones with friends were fun, while the ones without were just not fun at all.
makes
And
sense.
then
I would,
I went to do my expert roulettes in Final Fantasy XIV.
because when you're having fun, it's very hard to say what is the trigger of that fun, unless you like are taking things out and putting things back in just to see how that fun, was measured.
Which is just a random current dungeon. And had a great time, even though I've done dozens of them. Hell, sometimes I'll do an expert roulette when I'm already capped on my weekly tomestones, just because I feel like it.
Okay.
So I started wondering, what's the difference? Why does the easy content in 14 give me that feeling of satisfaction, while normal dungeons in WoW cause me to watch my other monitor?
I think Asman phrased it very well. Like, the telegraphs for fights is way more obvious. If you mess up, you're gonna, die. You may not, take down the team with you a lot of times, unless you're like the tank or something, which is rare. The tank gets KO'd, but I think it's like it's not face roll easy. Like, you can't just sit there in DPS. You will almost guaranteedly die in almost any fight with boss fight. So
I'll tell you one reason is because
there's also some mechanics that you can wipe the group if you're not paying attention. Like, say a boss is gonna do something to you, and you have to position yourself with your team, and you don't, or some like stuff like that. There are some bosses like that, but
in that fight that he just did, there were only two mechanics. There was the big circle and the smaller cone.
to be fair, Asman, that was just a pack pull. That's it. Like, you can't say WoW is any different. WoW's dungeons are the exact same. You pull a pack, maybe they have one or two abilities. That's about it.
And if you show the combat in WoW, there was like 7 mechanics that were occurring simultaneously.
No, I think he's wrong on this one, because that was just a normal pack pull. Like, that's trash mob.
Like,
That
for
wasn't a
example, we're at 202, right? Okay, so for example, like this guy, the big dick right here, this guy has 3 separate abilities that he does. These whelps
like
can
one.
also have, like, they have an attack and it freezes you if you don't do it right. Each of these casters has different abilities, like Tectonic Slam, Ice Bolt. These are 2 different NPCs. They need to be interrupted and brought into the group.
Yeah, but that's also like they need to be interrupted and brought to the group only on like high mythics. Normal dungeons, they don't do that. They just bring the melee on top of them and AoE them.
Like, the amount of things that you have to do whenever you're playing the game is much higher in WoW, and the things that you have to avoid is much higher. But conversely, in Final Fantasy, there are less things that you have to avoid, but the things are more punishing if you fail them.
The answer I came up with is, even though both are meant to be beaten, Final Fantasy XIV's mechanics are clearly pass or fail. I understand exactly how to do the bosses correctly, and it feels good to do them.
Yeah, the boss mechanics, like you actually learn the bosses. Like you're learning something in a dungeon in Final Fantasy. WoW's dungeons, like I can't tell you 90% of what the bosses do. Like, you know, don't get too far away, move away from teammates, and that's about it.
If I fail mechanics, I know, because I get a Vuln stack, and I'll be punished if I do that multiple times. On the other hand, in WoW, the easy content just isn't dangerous at all, to the point where I don't know if I'm doing anything correctly or not.
Well, the other difference is that the easy content is the same as the hard content. Like, if you're doing a plus 20, if you're doing a plus 10, or you're doing a plus 30, it is the exact same thing in Mythic Dungeon. It has the exact same mechanics, it's just that the numbers are different.
Yeah, that's the poor example then. You should say between a normal dungeon and Mythic Dungeon. Those are not the same.
It's hard to tell how to exactly do bosses until you start doing Mythic Plus. While leveling my first character,
That's
in
what I was just about
Dragonflight,
to say.
I sometimes killed bosses without.
Like Mythic Plus, like that's when you actually learn how to do the fights and stuff. Well, prior to Mythic, or at least in the dungeon scene, you don't need to know anything.
Without realizing they were bosses. To be clear, I'm not saying that easy content should be hard. That defeats the point. What I'm saying is that even easy content should be satisfying to do correctly. Here's an example.
I think that, like, the satisfying nature of, like, being able to avoid all of the different attacks and abilities or whatever. This video sucks. Guys, just chill out. Just listen to what he's saying. Don't be a two-head and be like, but he talks slow, he dumb. Stop. Just listen to what's being said. I don't care about that. It's totally irrelevant to me.
Yeah,
Here's
makes
a
no
boss in
difference.
Final Fantasy 14
His points are
that shoots lasers from the sides.
at least fairly well
All you got to do
said.
is look to see where the double lasers are pointing and stand to the side of that. Super easy mechanic that is obvious after the first time you see it, and feels super satisfying to do every time I run this place.
Well, I think that Final Fantasy dungeons and the raids, they're, like, way more cinematic. So, like, for example, like, I remember we fought this one dude in Final Fantasy, and his name was, I think, Susano. And, like, he
Isn't that like a raid boss though? Sasano? if I
brought down
remember
this
right?
gigantic, massive fucking sword, and everybody had to spam just, like, one button to stop him from pushing it, to push the sword away. That's an easy boss, but it feels really cool to do that. And I think that, yeah, WoW does need more elements where it feels really cool to be able to do something.
One boss I thought really did it well is that one ice boss. I think in Ruby's Sanctum. I think that's the dungeon. I could be wrong, but it's the one that, like, literally AoEs. Like, you have to hide behind the pillars, and then it does, like, this AoE that, like, splashes out, and, like, trying to remember, like, man, I can't remember where it's from. Anyways, like, that boss is actually really well done. In my opinion, it's one of my favorite bosses in the dungeons in WoW, in Dragonflight.
And it feels more cinematic for it to happen.
Yeah.
Every boss in recent years in Final Fantasy XIV has multiple mechanics like this. Now, let's look at a normal boss in WoW.
Okay. I think this is on heroic. I'm not sure. No, there's no way it's on heroic. Does it say what was it, a plus what? I don't know. She's dying so fast. He said, "Oh, it's on normal." Okay. I thought he just said a normal dungeon, not a normal mode difficulty dungeon. Okay, yeah. Understood.
Was that a boss? Or was that trash? It felt nice AoEing the ads, but I mean, it's just not very satisfying overall. I don't feel anything from that. Again, I want to emphasize, I'm not saying that the answer is to make things harder. I'm specifically talking about intentionally easy content here.
Okay.
My point is that more difficulty doesn't mean more fun, and the inverse of that is easiness doesn't have to be boring. In Final Fantasy XIV, I get a good similar feeling of satisfaction from doing boss mechanics correctly, regardless of if it's in normal story mode or savage difficulty. In WoW, I couldn't tell you half of what bosses do. And
I mean, that's not...
doesn't feel good.
I mean, I think that's just because he hasn't done it before. Because, like, I mean, I know what she does. For example, the Meladrusa fight, it's pretty simple. But, yeah. And there are elements of, like, count...
But I think that's the whole point, Asmin, is that maybe he did do it, but he did it on normal. And, like, for me, like, I haven't done Mythics yet. I don't know if I will, to be honest. But I haven't done them. And I don't know what any of the bosses, except for, like, a handful, do in all the dungeons. And I've played them multiple times, because I've leveled through dungeons, leveling through dungeoning on a few characters. So it's like I definitely know them to a degree. But that's... most of them I don't really know what they do. I think if I played Mythics, and I think that he did say that, like, outside of Mythics, you don't really know the boss fights.
Counterplay that you can do. So, like, you can reflect some of her spells. You have to stack up whenever she does that ice thing, and then you have to move the ice circle away. You have to cleanse the person who's tanking the whelps, because at 10 stacks they get frozen. The whelps come out 2 times in the fight. Like, there's more complexities to it. But I think what he's really getting at here, and this is what I'm getting out of this.
I mean, he already said it, but everything Asmin talked about was like stuff he probably learned doing Mythics, I would assume.
Is that the fights in WoW are not as cinematically satisfying as they are in Final Fantasy. And I think that's generally true. You want to know a really big departure from that, though? Is Vault of the Incarnates. Whenever you're flying in there and you're bombarding the Vault of the Incarnates with these dragons, and then you finally land and you fight that first boss, that sounds and that feels really fucking cool, man. But there's nothing...
I really want to, though. I'll probably do what I can to do it this weekend.
Let me see if I can find this. Yeah, was this it? I think there is nothing in WoW that has ever been on this level. Where's the cinematic here?
What's funny is he's bringing up content that's like super old in Final Fantasy.
The transition for this, because it was so fucking cool. Where is it? I'm not sure exactly. Maybe it's somewhere around here. Give me a second, guys. Sorry about this. Okay. I'll try to find it. Give me a second. Fuck. Okay.
I think I know which one he's talking about.
That's
When
where
you
I
have to
think
do
this
like
thing
the
is from.
bubble to survive his AOE.
Yeah. 3 fucking ads. The red dragon eats the mosquitoes. Oh shit, it just got cut ahead. Well, fuck. Which heals him and gives him damage boost. God damn it. I don't know when it's a good time to use the transition to fuck. Yeah, it got cut out.
Did we beat it?
Okay.
Did we beat it? Oh, fuck.
Yeah, it's a really cool fight.
So there's nothing in WoW that I think
but it's also like
is even
way
remotely close
like it's
to
really old.
All right, moving back in. This right here. There's nothing that is even close to this. Okay. This was fucking insane.
Do it! All right, I'm doing it. It's up. Holy shit.
And like
Oh
the
my
music
God.
is good.
I fucking
like
did
the
it, boys.
cinematic transition is good. It was fucking
There he is.
insane.
I'm back on him. I'm back on him. I got him.
Yeah.
And like people are just freaking the fuck
Okay.
out, obviously.
Holy shit!
That guy was no joke. And what was the closest thing we've had to this? Maybe Illidan in the Mythic Gul'dan fight? I don't know. Mythic Argus? No, not really. I mean, Mythic Argus just turned red. Who cares? Yeah, I don't know. Well, there was nothing. There was almost nothing in WoW ever that had like this level of cinematic appeal, where it's like the transition happens,
It's almost like a cutscene.
and like you
in
had
the
no
middle of the
idea
fight.
this shit was gonna happen at
Okay.
all, right?
All right, moving back in.
It just kind of came out of nowhere. And like especially with the music and everything about it, it was just
Yeah.
fucking insane.
Okay.
Such an anime moment.
This
Do
was
it.
so cool.
All right, I'm doing it.
And then you use
It's
like
up.
this massive ability to reduce the
Holy
damage that you
shit.
take. It's incredible. It was epic. Yeah, this was epic. It's like effectively a cutscene inside of the game. Lost Ark has
Yeah.
a little bit of this too. Like in that last Brelshaza gate, it feels really cool whenever the phase transitions happen. There's like music for it and everything. So that's where I think WoW and like Final Fantasy.
That's one thing that always bothered me with Lost Ark, is I never got a high enough item level to do a lot of those raids, even though they look really cool. I mean, yes, they're like super hard from what I've seen, but at the same time, I at least wanted to try them. But I don't know, it was a lot of grinding, and I didn't really want to find a group of people who were like good enough to do it. Like it just felt like it was just going to be like a huge time sink.
Content diverge. So it's actually not anything that has to do with the difficulty of the content. It has to do with the cinematic nature of overcoming the content.
Cinematic nature of overcoming the content. That's a weird sentence. I don't think it actually makes sense. But I think I know what he's saying. But also I do disagree. Like in terms of normal dungeons from Final Fantasy versus normal dungeons in WoW, well, I'm not counting mythics, just normal dungeons. Because let's be fair, most people don't really do mythics; they just do the normal dungeons. The normal dungeons in Final Fantasy just are telegraphed much better in terms of like what does what. There are sometimes that is the case with WoW. Like I said, there's this ice boss that I think is Final Fantasy level of telegraphing, which I think they need more of. And I think that's actually been the case so far in Dragonflight. A lot of bosses, like I'm trying to remember, and actually there are a few that are actually telegraphed and you actually need to do things. So I think they're moving in the right direction with that. But I think more than it's not in like I like stone-locked myself there. Basically, I think it needs more of it, is really what I'm saying.
And the mechanics in
Because almost every boss fight is like that in Final Fantasy.
WoW don't really feel very good to avoid. Wait till we get to a con, it's way better. Maybe it is. Yeah, it's the presentation of the content. Because this fight, I mean, the truth is, like, this fight is not super complex. You know,
also
he just does
super
like
old.
a tank smash, and you have to run out for a couple of things, and it's not like
In
it's
fact, I think it's like
impossible
the
to do or
vanilla.
anything. Can we
So
get
it's like you're
res?
talking like
Yeah, it's super old. So, yeah, this,
Ragnarok.
you have to keep in mind, like, this fight came out in like 2014, 2015. So they've made better ones since then.
Much better.
I think the other thing it's trying to say is you can clear normal mode content in WoW without ever really interacting with it. Yeah, exactly. Whereas like in Final Fantasy, even whenever you fight Titan, which is I think like the
Primal. Second Primal
Titan the
you fight?
second or third. I
I
forgot
think
which.
it's the second.
Maybe it's the
think
first or
Ifrit
second. Yeah, it's the
is,
second
first.
fucking
Ifrit.
primal that you fight.
Ifrit. Whatever.
If you get knocked off the edge, you're off the edge.
You're
That's
dead.
it. It's
Yeah.
not like you're coming back on. You're not getting you're not getting rezzed. Maybe you might get rezzed, but I don't know if you can even res at that level at all. But you're fucking dead. So not anymore. Yeah. Well, point is that you still have to do the mechanics correctly. Whereas like in WoW, you do not have to do them correctly. It does not matter.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. So yeah, it's like Vaulton. Yeah,
There's
I
like
think
a
Vaulton.
few. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's a few bosses where you do have to. The ice trick, I think, is one of them. And it also depends on like how geared your team is. Like, if there's a lot of DPS, there are some cases where you just burn them before their mechanic even comes into play. Like that first boss in the Onari Plains dungeon, the dragon. Like he does this like AoE like tremor thing. And if you don't hit him with the catapult, then that will most likely wipe you, unless you can just burn him through it.
In
It's
my
kinda dumb.
opinion, is
That's on the
probably
regular
it's
dungeon.
still my
I'm not talking
favorite
about
boss
Mythic.
fight in Lost Ark. I think it is the best ARPG boss fight that I've ever played in any ARPG. It is incredible. Only the second gate though. The first gate was fucking stupid. I hated that. You finished Belshazzar Gate 6? No, I haven't. We're gonna finish it today. That's what my plan is. Easiest? The thing is that, and isn't that interesting, right? That the easiest one is the one that I like the most, and a lot of people like the most. I don't think that the difficulty of this content, like for example, like this boss fight is probably a lot easier than Mythic Jailer. I would say so. But people like this one more. Why is that? It's because, difficulty is not quality. Difficulty does not equal fun. Exactly.
Yeah. When the guy in the video said it, difficulty, like hard content does not equal fun, and easy content does not equal boring. So, yeah, no, I mean, easy content WoW versus Final Fantasy 14. Like, I think WoW's moving in a better direction with it, which, copying from Final Fantasy, which is fine. Final Fantasy copy things from WoW. Like, go both ways. It doesn't really matter. I don't really care. As long as the MMOs are getting better. Like, that's what really matters. And I think Final Fantasy did their easy, like, normal dungeons much better than WoW's. So, alright. This one, I don't think I've seen Asmin react to this one, but to me, I thought it was interesting. Why isn't gaming fun anymore? I think for a lot of people, you're no longer a kid. You know what I mean? Like, hanging out, it's the same thing, like hanging out with your friends was much funner as a kid than it is as an adult, even though not much has changed. And in fact, it's even better because now that you have your own money, like your own car, you literally go where you want and just do what you want most times. Obviously, like you can't like if you're not a millionaire, you're not just buying yachts and stuff, but like the things you wanted to do as a kid, you can easily do as an adult, and yet it's not as fun. I think that's just life in general. Just isn't as fun as you grow older. I'm guessing. And yeah, I'll just take a look at the video for a bit. I think it depends on kind of how it starts out with, whether I'll stick with it.
Listen, guys, here's the thing.
And of course, this is by the pie face.
I'm old. I have gray hairs. But there's one thing that's been in my life since my hair was short and full of color, and that's video games. But recently, I've realized that I spend a lot more time consuming content about video games than I do actually playing video games. In fact, in the past couple of years, there's been months
I don't. I definitely play them more than I watch content on them.
at a time where I did not play a single
I'll do
minute
usually
of video
both at
games.
the same time,
And it
to be
most
fair.
certainly is not because I'm a busy and accomplished adult with a roaring career and social life, because quite the opposite. My life mostly revolves around watching YouTube videos, streams, and shows, but I actively miss playing video games and spending countless hours immersing myself in creative worlds and game systems, and it seems like I'm the only one with this problem. All of my friends still have the games that they're obsessed with and play all the time. I personally don't enjoy most of those games since apparently I'm a boomer that hates games now. So what's the deal? Am I growing out of this hobby that I've loved for so long? Or perhaps I'm just jaded from the infestation of corporate.
That, or maybe you just like a certain type of game and that game hasn't, released like a big version of it. You know what I mean? Like if you're really into MOBAs, then obviously you have League of Legends. There's no need to like stop playing because they're constantly releasing new stuff for it.
Corporate greed and its insatiable hunger for infinite growth afflicted upon us at every corner, in every game, with cash shops and battle passes. So many.
Yeah, but that's not what made a lot of these games, like, at least to me, like, that's not why I stopped playing Lost Ark. I don't give a damn if people want to spend money on it. Same with Smite. I played that for a little bit, but I didn't stop playing because you could. They didn't even have a battle pass from when I played. So
Many battle passes and coins and the crystals you have to buy, and the crystals you don't get the right amount of crystals, and it doesn't make sense for all the items in the shop because they have.
I mean, if you're talking about freaking Lost Ark and Diablo Immortal, it's like,
You have a little left over because they want you to spend more money. Or maybe games are just bad now. Or is it some other nuanced collection of reasons that I'm going to spend the rest of this video exploring and talking about? Yeah, no, games are definitely just bad now. It was the early 90s. One of my earliest, most vivid memories of video games was the Christmas that I got a Super Nintendo. I got this Mickey Mouse game called The Magical Quest, starring Mickey Mouse. I
had
remember
that
just
game.
laying down in my
That was
living
pretty
room
good.
for hours, playing on my little CRT TV. It was like cracked to my tiny little underdeveloped brain, just seeing pixels moving at my command. I was hooked. And that was it. The floodgates were open. Throwing Foot Clan ninjas into the screen in Turtles of Time, collecting all the letters in Donkey Kong Country,
yeah.
Koopas.
in Super Mario World, solving puzzles with all the cool items and the Link to the Past, that kick-ass
All
intro
solid
in Super
games.
Metroid. I was hyped and stressed
Yeah,
out of my little
really
mind
good
for that.
games.
This era was peak gaming and would forever solidify me as a Nintendo fanboy. But then, a few years later, the most fateful day of any kid growing up in the mid-90s, the Christmas where I got my... It was that sick-ass green one that was bundled with the
Oh,
Donkey
the
Kong
64.
and that little RAM pack. But now, games were 3D. Donkey Kong, Mario, Zelda all had an entirely new dimension to explore, opening up so many gameplay options. But that wasn't all, because you could play with 4 players. Mario Kart, Mario Party, Smash Bros.
Gauntlet.
The rise of party games. You could sit on the couch with your friends, smacking controllers out of each other's hands, accuse them of cheating, ruin friendships. It was great. But party
Screen
games weren't
checking.
the only thing
Yeah.
that benefited from the 4 controller slots.
At least with like Xbox, with like Halo. GoldenEye, wow.
Multiplayer
That was pretty
first-person
good.
shooters. My friends and I spent countless hours on GoldenEye 64. We even
What was really cool with GoldenEye was like there was a lot of little secrets in almost every level.
used to get cardboard boxes and tape them up to the screen to section it off so that you couldn't screen look. We took that shit very
Yep.
seriously. Now, by this time, first-person shooters already existed on PC, but I had the crappiest Dell that was cheap and out of date even for the late 90s, though I was still able to play bangers like Roller Coaster Tycoon, Age of Empires 2, StarCraft. I knew the PC was eventually going to be where it's at for me. But for now, the next console era was upon us.
GameCube had like a really like that was probably one
I
of
really
my most
feel like
played
there was
consoles.
2 games in particular that defined this generation for me personally. The first game was Smash Bros. There was so many more characters than the first game, so many more stages. It controlled beautifully. It was a masterpiece. One time my parents made us go play outside, and so we stuck the TV up against the window and threw the controllers out there, and so we were all just standing
What the
outside
heck?
playing Smash Bros. Through a window. And the second game was Time Splitters 2. From the same developers of GoldenEye, Time Splitters would become my favorite shooter to this day. The game had an insane amount of game modes, tons of characters, a map editor that you make your own story missions. It had it all. One of my friends was a genius when it came to making maps, and every time we got together, he had a couple new maps that had some interesting gimmick that completely changed the way we would play the game. One of my favorite maps of his was one where it was just this square. It was like a grid of rooms with doors, and we would run around with one shot, one kill baseball bats. It was terrifying. If you've never played Time Splitters, I'm sorry, you're really missing out. The era of couch gaming would not last forever though, and in fact, it was soon coming to a close. Monday, March 15th, 2004.
RuneScape? Honestly, I didn't even know about RuneScape for the longest of time. Which is funny because I did have a PC.
This was the day that I created my first RuneScape account. It would be my first introduction into the world of MMOs, the genre that encapsulated
And when I
everything
did
that I
find
loved
out about
about
it, it looked like trash,
the
so I didn't even
adventure,
want to play
the
it.
immersion, puzzle solving, crafting, and I could play and enjoy it with my friends and hundreds of people across the world. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was loving every minute of it. Later that year, a certain other MMO would release, World of Warcraft. Unfortunately, there was one issue. I still
This
had
computer.
dial-up internet.
Oh, come on, you could play WoW on dial-up. The only thing you couldn't really do with dial-up was freaking AV, Archaic Valley. Oh my god, dial-up with AV was just so funny. The only thing I could do, I still remember this, was loot bodies so I can turn in the stuff to try to summon the ice elemental.
It'd be a few years until I got out of dial-up hell. So in the meantime, the only way I could play World of Warcraft was either by playing at friend's house or sneaking the installation onto the school computers in the library, which I absolutely did. They were not very well managed at the time. I wouldn't hit max level in World of Warcraft until the tail end of Burning Crusade just before Wrath. But by then, World of Warcraft was the game that I played, and it would remain that way for several years until about halfway through my senior year of high school. That's when I got beta access to StarCraft II Wings of Liberty. My friends and I were so hyped for this game, we spent every day in school in our computer class just playing StarCraft II. I fell in love with competitive gaming and esports because of StarCraft II. It was the first game that I actually tried to play competitively and work my way up a ranked ladder. I would practice almost every day with friends, watch Day 9 and Husky videos, aspirations of going pro. I only ever made it to Plat, but getting to Plat felt incredible. I remember my friend and I used to wake up at like 5 in the morning to watch the GSL. And in 2011, as a broke college student,
I had no interest in RTS like PvP, like against other players, like unless they're friends and we're just having fun. But I never like cared about like the competitive side of RTSs.
in Orlando, Florida,
Just
I
have
bought a
fun with
ticket to
them.
MLG using a literal bag of coins. But it was such an incredible experience. My friends and I got to meet all of our favorite players, Huck, In Control. We also got to meet Day 9, Husky, Artosis, and Tasteless. It would be my very first, and unfortunately, my very last live gaming event. And eventually, StarCraft
Wow.
2 would give way to League of Legends, which a few years later gave way to Smite, which would be the last competitive esport game that I played seriously. None of them really.
That's weird. I mean, why doing that Smite? You would think you'd play like I don't know, Overwatch, I don't know, that or go back to StarCraft 2. Like, sounds like you're really into RTSs.
They grabbed me in the same way that StarCraft 2 did, and I'm not sure any other competitive esport ever will.
Well, yeah, because RTSs are unfortunately a dying genre.
This was about the peak of gaming in my life. The best of it all came before, and I feel like I can pinpoint the exact year that the steep slope downward began, and that year was 2014. This was the year that StarCraft was all but dead. The year Warlords of Draenor came out, the first ever World of Warcraft expansion that I did not buy or play. This was the year Destiny released and was a massive disappointment. This was the year that Smite
Yeah.
introduced loot boxes.
Destiny was really good until you like realize there wasn't much content at the end game.
This was the year that WildStar released and failed. And every year
To be fair, I think WildStar was actually a really fun game. I just think it was just too hard for the casual player base.
on from this point just seemed to be one big disappointment after another. It felt more and more common for games to release unfinished or broken or have some predatory monetization. Every year seemed worse than the last. Gaming seemed different now.
I mean, you show Overwatch, but Overwatch wasn't really that bad with that. It didn't feel like it to me. I never felt like I had to spend money to have fun with Overwatch. If you want to do all the collectibles, then sure, I guess, but like just to play the game. Monetizations. Obviously they have.
The gaming industry has grown incredibly fast since I first picked up a controller. In fact, in 2021, the games industry raked in more cash than music and film combined. A good bit of this growth can be attributed to the rise of mobile gaming, which in 2021 made up 45% of the total revenue in the industry. And of course, the stench of this heaping pile of cash would not go unnoticed by the insectoid swarm of C-suite executives, and with their grubby little shit-stained appendages and their Dunkus touch, they've pushed hard to make console and PC gaming monetization more closely resemble that of a mobile game, attempting to normalize all the same underhanded tactics which apply psychological manipulation in various ways to pry as much money as they can out of its users in a predatory manner. Whether it's feeding off of players' addictions by implementing gambling-adjacent mechanics, or their frustration by creating problems and selling back the solutions, or FOMO with limited time, buy now expensive skins. The online nature of the live service model has primed games for these sort of exploitations. It's not completely without its pushback though, as we gamers have been successful in combating some of these changes, as is the case with loot boxes, as we've pretty much eradicated those from most PC and console games at this point. Though it definitely seems like a losing battle, as every year more ground gives way to the normalization of such strategies, in like a 1 step forward, 10 step back kind of way. For example, if we look back, it wasn't that long ago when DLC was considered outrageous. It was seen as devs taking content out of the original game and holding it back to sell later. But
I remember around that time, like the big issue was that it was content in the CD, like there, but you had to pay more to unlock it. So I don't really agree with that too much. And I think for most people, like honestly, this was always going to happen. It happens with everything. So
as always, the ground gave way, and the conversation shifted to whether or not it was day one DLC, or how much effort they put into the DLC, if the content was worth it. Fast forward to today, where similar conversations are being had about the pay-to-win debate, where at first any pay-to-win is completely unacceptable, to now being able to find conversations about how a certain game is not that pay-to-win.
Well, the reason why the debate's even coming into play is because the games are good. Like, pay to win on a crappy game, like, no one's going to stand behind it. Pay to win on a really good game, like, for example, Lost Ark, people are more okay with it because it's a good game. But at the same time, like, you don't have to play them. There's a lot of other games that don't have pay to win, or at least not, like, really pay to win, that you can play. Especially games you pay for. Like, it's common for free-to-play games to be more pay-to-win, but then, in a sense, it does make sense in a way, so.
But complaining about monetization in games is nothing new or original. In fact, it's an oversaturated market, and at this point, just feels like beating a dead horse. It seems you'll never get enough people to care about this topic, and until that happens...
Of course you won't, because it doesn't matter to most people. Non-competitive games, why should they care if it's like pay-to-win?
Nothing will change.
Now you put pay to win in a game like Call of Duty, Overwatch, like that kind of stuff, then that's different. League of Legends, like if it introduced pay to win games, that game would die in a year.
Instead, I'd like to talk about a bit of a hot take.
Maybe not die, but I would almost guarantee it would lose at least half its player base.
Here, that in the past 10 years, gaming really hasn't changed much at all. The gaming industry feels pretty stagnant. If I compare games as they are now to how I thought they would be by now as a kid,
What's wrong with
the
that
picture's
guy's
very
mouth?
disappointing. As a kid who just discovered MMOs like RuneScape and World of Warcraft, I was blown away by the idea of what MMOs could be in the future. I would hop off World of Warcraft and go play Dungeons & Dragons and think, man, one day World of Warcraft is going to have the same level of choice and consequence that I can have with my imagination playing D&D. Now,
Are you like, who had thought this? I definitely didn't. I knew about Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't really play it, but I think that's like kind of dumb. Like, what to have that level of choice, like in an MMO when RPGs aren't even able to give you that.
obviously,
Some RPGs are closer to it, I guess. Like, what like the Divinity games. But even then, it's not even close to Dungeons and Dragons because there are literally no rules. It'd be like having a game developer, like having your own personal game developer who can make on-the-fly changes while you're playing. You can't do that in normal games like you can in D&D.
that hasn't happened yet. And as a kid, I didn't know anything.
It's not going to happen. The only way that's ever going to happen is if they somehow make AI able to directly make changes on the fly. So we're probably decades away from something like that.
About game development. But I've heard a similar observation from Razboon in his video series Gaming for a Non-Gamer, which is a great series and I recommend you check it out, where he discusses his wife's disappointment discovering video games for the first time.
Her expectations for what she thought she could do in each game were always different than the reality, and I think as she realized that games were more simple than she had first assumed, some of the intrigue about them faded.
There's a massive lack of innovation.
Then have her play something that does have that, like Valheim, Minecraft, like those kind of games where it's like very freeing in what you can do. It's super non-linear, like there's no real story to them. Well, Valheim, yeah, but Ark Survival. I mean, trying to think like that. I know there's other games, so it's like if that's what she said she was looking for, and then you introduced her to a game like Doom, like, dude, what the heck?
And risk-taking in the AAA
That'd be like if you had, or Sims. Like, Sims is a good one for that kind of stuff.
space. As we see games like Skyrim being released 1 billion times, The Last of Us is getting its 3rd version of the game, Call of Duty ran out of ideas and decided to just loop back around and start re-releasing their games in order again, hoping nobody would notice, but they somehow made all the games worse so everyone noticed. Which brings me to my next point, where not only are companies not really interested in innovating at all,
Of course they noticed. Like, it's a part of their campaign is they're re-releasing it. Everyone knows. The fact that they make it worse, it's like the crazy part.
but they seem to be actively taking step backwards in innovation. If you look at something like the original Fallout's super in-depth dialogue system versus Fallout 4's dialogue system, it's a huge step back. And that's a tame example. It gets so much worse. Blizzard, for example, figured out that they can retroactively ruin a 20-year-old game with Warcraft 3 Reforged. Well, I guess that was pretty innovative. The only real innovations coming out of this industry are coming from indie developers and modders, the latter of which is responsible for the 2 biggest genres.
I don't think so. Final Fantasy XIV has been innovating a lot of things. Not like a ton of things, but like the whole one character can be every class. Crafting is its own job. And I think there's, like, I don't know if other games have done it, but I doubt they've done it as well. So it's like, I think you're just cherry picking like the bad things from AAA games and really focusing on them, which I understand that's like a human thing where you get, 99 positive things, one bad thing, and you focus on the bad thing. So, but I think you need to reflect more on the positives that AAAs have introduced. I'm not saying AAA gaming is better than indie. I think indie games have to be innovative because they can't fall back on graphics. They can't fall back on maybe gameplay a little, but like they can't really do that the way AAA games like God of War. Like most of the appeal to the game is the visuals.
In the past decade, and that's without even the expectation of getting paid. Isn't that weird? Kind of goes against the conventional capitalist thinking, huh? Looking at the trajectory of the industry, it's really hard to not just be depressed about it all and wonder if the industry
Why?
can ever course correct.
Dude, there's games like Elden Ring, and say what you want about Genshin Impact having like gotchas, which you don't have to get involved in it to have fun with the game. I beat Genshin Impact, or up to when I played it. There was nothing else for me to do other than the gacha stuff, so that's why I stopped playing. So I don't really care about that.
It's weird to think that things like YouTube, Reddit, and all these other social media sites haven't really been around that long. And yet it's sometimes hard to remember what it was like before they existed.
YouTube's been
These
around
sites
for a
have
while
made
now.
data mining, crowdsourced information, and video guides all accessible to everyone
Google.
at all times. In some cases, the internet will have every bit of information about every mechanic and secret in a given game before they even release. And all of these things have drastically changed how we play video games.
No, most people don't look up video game info. That's the honest truth, man.
Let's take a look at a game like World of Warcraft. If I had to describe how I feel playing retail WoW in one word, it would be emptiness. Not because of a lack of content necessarily, so much as the game just kind of feels soulless.
No, the game feels soulless. It doesn't feel soulless, it just feels like shit. Shadowlands was a garbage expansion. Almost across the board.
Where before, the game was about adventure and discovery, it is instead now a game about optimization. It's essentially a solved game where add-ons and logs have optimized game.
If you get involved in it, you don't have to do any of that stuff. Like, that's one thing I really don't like when people talk about it. It's like, oh yeah, you can look up these things. It's like, you don't have to. No one is sitting over you typing these things with like in front of you and forcing you to look at it. Like, I'll be honest, I don't really look at this kind of stuff. I just play the game, and then once I am ready to do, like, for example, I'm like trying to do arena or the solo queue arena just to have fun with it. So I'll just look up maybe a video on like what specs are doing well in arena. And that's about as far as I go. And that's from someone who games like a lot, but I'm also kind of casual now. But at the same time, like, there's way more people doing solo queue than people looking up those videos.
Gameplay to a T with little room for experimentation or creativity.
Like maybe 20%.
Which is fine. I mean, no one likes to play suboptimally. I'm not trying to vilify optimization, as it can be quite fun for some people. Take speedrunning, for example. Speedrunning is such an interesting hobby to me. It's something I've always wanted to get into, but I've always felt a little intimidated by. The stuff that people are able to achieve with speedrunning is truly mind-blowing. Some of which is only really possible because of the interconnected nature of modern gaming, where sharing glitches and exploits is part of the fun of collectively iterating on runs to shave off more and more time. But then if you look at something like RuneScape, one of the most solved games that has become literally all about the optimization, you'll find a community who's made it a tradition of coming up with off-the-wall challenges and restrictions inflicted upon their accounts, also known as snowflake accounts, so that they are forced to forge their own path. There's no guide to follow on how to clear one of the hardest raids in old school RuneScape if you're not allowed to leave the swamp zone. But one man, after 3 years of theory crafting, grinding, and 33 very entertaining YouTube videos, was able to accomplish that goal, with hundreds and thousands of people watching and loving it. So clearly, the problem for World of Warcraft isn't just optimization itself. It's that optimization isn't just confined to the few who enjoy it, but instead sort of forced onto everyone else. With all these tools available,
that is the case, and why WoW rating has gone really downhill, is that it feels like you need mods, you need to look up the fights, because a lot of groups will just kick you.
To everyone, and things
like Final Fantasy, they're not really like this. A lot of times they'll just teach you the fight then and there if you're new. You don't have to look it up. Or you'll see someone whisper you like, hey, you were supposed to step out of that, or when this turns whatever color, like you want to move here.
Things like Raider.io assigning public completion scores, everyone is expected to be fully optimized or not play the game. Because again, no one likes to play suboptimally. Ignorance truly is bliss. It's my opinion that this is the real reason why World of Warcraft has been struggling. Like Asmongold has said, Blizzard has ignored the casual audience and failed to produce fun and compelling activities that aren't just about the optimization. Instead, they just continue to double down on the raids and dungeons, catering to this nature of gameplay. Now, as of this recording, Dragonflight has not released yet, so maybe that will be the expansion that fixes this issue. But it's not just retail. A lot of players were excited about Classic and logged in expecting to recapture that nostalgic sense of adventure.
They're kind of dumb.
But things are too different now. the way we play games is too different now. The game didn't seem nearly as hard as they remembered, the world not as vast. But I think it comes down to the fact that every facet of the game has been solved already, and that the joy of the original release lied in the discovery and the journey. Now this is not everyone's opinion, there's still plenty of people that very much enjoyed Classic. This is mostly just anecdotal sentiment from me and my friends. But I do think that this might be
Yeah, I was gonna say, I have a lot of friends who actually really like Classic. So.
why so many people get excited whenever a new MMO is released. It's a chance to discover things for the first time.
I mean, there is that, but it's also like, could this be my new home in a way? Like, a lot of people had that MMO that was their game, you know what I mean? And they want to see if maybe this game will be it. So
to not be beholden to the methods and build,
because I think this argument of exploring something new, you could use that on any game, any RPG, I would say.
That someone else already figured out and everyone is expected to use. A chance for you to be the one that discovers those methods. But for better or for worse, this is just the way the world is now. Maybe someday a game will come out that is immune to this phenomenon. A game that can't be solved, where the discovery never goes away.
The only way you're going to have that, dude, is if you have randomly generated everything. Which actually Wayfinder seems to kind of be looking towards that, if I remember right. So keep an eye on that. See if Wayfinder is your thing. Sounds like it. If you want everything to always be new.
Doesn't seem possible.
Doesn't mean it will always be good.
But who knows? Maybe someday.
Jeez, still more. Why are you making this all serious, dude? Of all the ones you've listed, this one should be the most obvious. You were a freaking child, and now you're a grown man, or grown person, adult, whatever. If you're... It doesn't matter what gender it is. I don't know why I said man, but, you're a grown person. You're an adult now, so, obviously, most things about you have changed. I don't know anyone who... Well, that's not true. The few people I know who are who haven't really changed much since they're kids, aren't really people you want to hang around with. You know what I mean? They throw tantrums, they're freaking childish, they're petty. So it's I hope you have changed. Damn, dude, if you haven't, that's really sad. So it's this is the most obvious. I want to see what he says, but
I don't feel like a different person. I feel like I always have been and always will be me. But I've changed my mind and opinions on a lot of things in the past 10 years. Growing up and dealing with adult responsibilities can be really stressful. You're faced with a lot of change and uncertainty, and it can be really easy to succumb to worry and regret.
I mean, that was a dumb thing. I've always felt on me. Who the hell are you going to feel like? James Bond? Of course you feel like you.
But worry and regret are just a waste of time. Time that could be better spent having fun. You know, people say video games are a waste of time, but personally, I think that having fun and enjoying your life...
Almost anything can be seen as a waste of time. It determines on what your priorities are. If you believe entertainment is a waste of time, literally you can throw most books, all movies, all television, all games as technically waste of time. Even though, even in that scenario where you think entertainment's a waste of time, there's a lot of learning you can do from media. Doesn't matter if it's books or whatever. So it's still not technically a waste of time, but it just that's how it is. There are some people who are all about just making money, all about working out, going outside, hiking, whatever it is. I would see games as a waste of time. Me, I see people who go out hiking all the time, that's kind of a waste of time. It's just a bunch of rocks. You know, there's no pot of gold you're out hunting. So physically, for exercise though, I mean, it's the same thing. You can still get things out of it, so it's not a complete waste of time. But yeah,
life is the best way to spend your time. But what do you do if you no longer enjoy your favorite hobby? With this fog hanging over my head, I began reminiscing on how I used to enjoy games. I used to spend countless hours grinding the ladder in StarCraft 2, working on refining builds, seeing small improvements over time, making quantifiable progress in a skill feels so good. The dopamine. But today, if you ask me to play just about any competitive game, I could not be fucking bothered. I haven't played League of Legends in like 9 years.
With the Star Wars one, are you sure it's not just a case where you really, really like Star Wars? Did I really say Star Wars? StarCraft. Where it's just your perfect game. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really get competitive in games unless I really like them. League of Legends, I got competitive for a bit. Warcraft, I really did try to get competitive in vanilla. But, like, outside of that, I'm not really a competitive person to begin with. So it's like, that's not even completely true because it's like, I've played most fighting games growing up. Soul Calibur, Tekken, Dead or Alive, Street Fighter, like almost anyone you can name, I've probably played it. Same with shooter games. But it's not like for me anymore. So.
But I booted it up a couple of months ago. My friends were telling me about all the new champions and the new metas and the new builds, and I just wanted to go take a nap. Is it because my attention span is shot? Is the lack of elasticity in my rotting brain protesting against me trying to shove even more useless shit into it? Maybe both. I used to have the drive to spend hours learning everything I could about a new game. There were times where all I could think about was whatever game I was currently playing, thinking about what I wanted to accomplish next, how I was going to do it, and I wouldn't stop until I finished. Nowadays, I'd be lucky to stick with the game for more than a couple weeks before I'm over it, regardless of if I actually finished it or not. So then, are there any games that I do enjoy? After so many disappointing letdowns and trying to enjoy games that just start to annoy me after 2 weeks, this question legitimately crossed my mind. And at the peak of my jadedness, one game proved to me that I did still indeed have the capacity to fall in love with the game. And that game was Valheim. A game that isn't even finished yet, but a game that so perfectly created a sense of adventure and discovery that it reminded me why I love gaming to begin with. So it seems there may still be remnants of a gamer deep underneath all the jadedness. I've proven to myself that I definitely...
I mean, it's just like I said, like you just haven't found the game for you. Sounds like Valheim. Like imagine, like for a second, Valheim went MMO. Like they did like a super overhaul of their netcode to where you can play with a bunch of people in a shared open world. You'd be into MMOs again. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just you're waiting on a game for you.
I haven't outgrown
There's
the
nothing
hobby.
wrong with that.
Maybe I've just been playing the wrong games. And sure, the world is different, and the way we play games is different, but there's still fun to be had. And despite the industry's best efforts to cannibalize itself, there will always be passionate indie developers and modders to pick up the slack and make good games and experiences. And maybe that's enough. Well, it kind of has to be enough. But I'm determined to rekindle my love of gaming. And that will be my New Year's resolution. I will begin my search to find the fun.
Yeah, just try games until you find one that's good. Or at least that you find good. Wonder if he played Elden Ring. I mean, I would assume 2 weeks, so... Alright. Okay, I'm gonna take a break because I'm gonna grab something to eat, but... Well, it's in front of me, but haven't eaten. So... But yeah, why isn't gaming fun anymore? I think for this individual, it's just the case he hasn't found a game for him. But I think that's for a lot of people. It's much harder. Not harder, but I think we're more picky with it. But yeah, I'm gonna take a break here. I'll just put on some music just to pass the time. Okay. It's what were we just watching? This one, right? Yeah, that's the end. So next video, Wrath of Lich King in a nutshell. Nutshell by Asman. But he's reacting to Captain Grin's video, so. I really like Captain
This
Grin's
is the
videos.
beginning and the end, mortals. None may enter the Master's sanctum.
Come on, guys, pull now. We're wasting time.
Barrel guard, do something!
Ugh.
Owie! Guys, can you kill the spike, please? I can't heal like this, and the other healer said they're going for a smoke.
Look at
True.
that. You know what you call
That's
this? Nax Tin Man on Sunday afternoon.
Yep.
You know, like one day before the reset, everybody gets home from church and they're just trying to do a quick little raid. Yep. There it is. Nax Tin Man, by the way, normal mode.
Guys, please, I'm dying. Just kill the spike.
Everybody used to stack up. That's,
What?
they got kicked. They kicked him out of the guild.
Wow.
Okay. Which, to be fair, by
Oh
the
my
way, is
God.
his fault, because the strategy for Lord Marigar is to stack up inside of his hitbox so the flame lines don't actually hit you because they don't spawn directly underneath the boss, and then you have everybody stacked directly underneath him, and that way they can be easily cleaved down and broken out. So, to be fair, they should have kicked him out of the guild because he was in the wrong fucking spot.
Damn.
Wait, what? Wait a second. What the fuck was that?
True.
I guess I was worrying for nothing.
Yeah. Oh, wow!
Old God.
No, there's a lot of mobs and... Shut up! Just go get it!
Yep. Now, what will make this perfect is as soon as the mobs start attacking him, an alliance guy comes down and starts mining him.
Oh my God, I was about to say that. That's so funny. That happens all the time.
Yep.
Classic. Thank you, hero, for aiding us in protecting the wildlife of Northrend.
Yeah.
Go now with our blessing and make nature proud.
And then you go kill all the animals in Sholazar Basin.
Hey, you bleeding muppet, how about we
He
go
called it.
shoot a bunch of fucking giraffes?
So
and
funny.
Yeah, kill them giraffes. Get rid of them. Yep, there it is. There it is.
Him,
The
what
good
is Bobby
days.
up to? Haven't seen him at raid night for months now, and we're kind of short of people today.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure. Let me go check on him.
Apparently, he's been here the whole time.
Farming time lost
Hey,
proto
Bobby.
drake.
No,
What the fuck?
What are you doing, man? He was after my timeless proto drake. I could tell.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's mine. I'm sure my hunt will be over any moment now. It'll spawn any second now.
Oh my
Any
God.
second. Right over there. I mean over here. I mean over there.
Wait, no.
Bro, I don't understand how people get this worked up over the time lost proto drake. It's not that big of a deal. Like, I remember whenever I got it back in the day, it was a big deal, but like now everybody knows everything about it. Like, it's just, you just go and get it. Like, it's not that hard.
Any second now.
It's a 280% speed, true.
Oh my god, I just got the fucking dragon finish.
Of course.
Fuck you.
I guess now I understand why they call it
Time
Time
lost.
Lost
Yeah.
Proto Drake. Get it? Okay, I'm done. I'm just gonna have you guilt kicked and find a replacement.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
That's the horde area. You can't go in there.
Shut up!
I tried doing this whenever it came out.
Yeah, of course you play Core. No wonder your parents are fucking disappointed in you.
I do it sometimes when I forget what player I'm playing. Or what character I'm playing.
Oh, wow. It's one of my favorite zones in WoW. I think it's
Yeah.
like one of everybody's. It was
It's really
such
good
a good
zone.
one.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful that I don't want to fight anymore. Yeah. Same.
What the hell?
Yep.
I need those amber seeds.
Oh my god. All part of his plan.
That's right, champion. Pull out those amber seeds. It's all going according to my master plan.
Of course.
At this rate, maybe one day I will have an expansion of my own.
Imagine that. Too bad that never happened, right, guys? That never happened, right? That was very good.
Hey, if you enjoyed the
That's
video
pretty
and want to
funny.
support the channel,
Let me
consider
link it.
subscribing to my Patreon.
This
Thanks.
is fucking funny. Yeah, I love these. What a great video. Yeah, these are fucking perfect, man. Especially, like, I think one of my favorite moments in any of the Captain Grimm videos was whenever, what was it? They were in Molten Core, and the priest was standing in the fire, and everybody was telling him to move, and he didn't move, and then he finally moved, and everybody was, like, super happy about it. That was my favorite one.
That's actually
Get out of
legit
the
what
fire,
happens.
Derek! Derek, get out of the fire!
That really did happen like a lot. Even in Wrath of the Lich King, it happened.
Fire, Derek, move out of the fire! Derek, move, quick, Derek, move out of the fire! And so he finally was like, yes! Yeah, it was so good. I think I like that one the most. But this one,
I do like, I don't know, for me, that when the priest is like, hey, can someone help me? And then he gets kicked. Like that. What's crazy is like, it's funny, but it happens.
one is also really, really good. Especially, I think my favorite part here is the Time Lost Proto Drake. And then the guy here.
Oh, who gets it?
It is like an out. It is like an out of here. Guys, wait! Oh my god! I just got the fucking dragon.
You guys, like, far F you.
Under me.
It just flew under me. It just spawned right under me. Yeah, exactly. It's not a surprise at all. Don't forget the world buff before Molten Core. Oh yeah, there's a lot of those to do, man. There sure are. The guy in the background, yeah.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
I guess.
If it was actual classic, there would have been a racial slur attached to that. But it's close enough.
Yeah, that was a really good video. I really like watching those kind of videos. They're just funny. Just fun to watch. All right, so next one here. Throne and Liberty, 2023's best looking new MMORPG. I mean, there's a lot coming out that looks really good. Definitely Throne and Liberty, though, I think is going to be a contender. It actually looks really fun, too, so I'm really looking forward to this one.
For better or worse, Throne and Liberty is one of the best looking MMOs that we currently have scheduled.
What a fucking
Yeah, it's just the monetization that is the most worrying about it.
intro. For better or for worse, this is one of the best MMOs, guys. Listen. We're going to take what we can get, all right?
And confirmed
Exactly.
to release in 2023. On the better side...
Nope, sorry. Okay, it's someone at the door again. Sorry.
of things look to be the game's combat world and mechanics. There's some really promising and interesting...
I love how, like, I already know what he's going to say. He's probably going to say, like, the monetization is bad or problematic because it's made by, I think, NCSoft or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just like... It's like the... You could take the announcement of a new MMO and then put a few prompts into an AI and then have an AI generate a script that you can make a YouTube video about any MMO that you want that's coming out.
The ideas
Because they're all
here
the
from
same.
what they've shown off so far. As for what's worse, well, that would be the fact that NCSoft are the ones developing and publishing this game, so you better get your wallets ready, just crack them wide open and start pouring the money out.
Just
That's
like what
we
I
should
said.
expect from the monetization
There we go.
here. However, that stuff turns out, though, I am here for the ride. I am interested in playing Throne
Exactly.
of Liberty.
At least gonna try it.
I think so. Like, I mean, even if the game's pay to win trash, I think it'll probably be fun for like a month. I mean, I played Tower of Fantasy. It was fun for a month. So I just hope that I can get good
Yeah,
content out of it.
exactly.
Like, I'm not expecting this game to be like a multi-year investment. Maybe it'll end up being that, but I'm not going into it expecting that.
That's fine.
Yeah, a really cool looking upcoming MMO. A lot of the
1 second. Okay.
actual game related stuff that they've shown so far does seem pretty interesting, and it's one of the main reasons I am generally looking forward to this game.
Yeah, the game
well,
looks fun.
this week brought us
So-
10 whole new minutes of director's preview.
I
They
looked
went
at a
into
little bit
some
of this.
details about the game, mechanics, and systems. So let's jump in and check all of that out. So the video opened up with one developer talking about
That's
being
weird.
a lifetime
These are like
fan of
little
MMOs
head-
and the varied experiences delivered by the genre. And hey, I'm right there with you. It's the reason it's one of my favorite genres in all of gaming. MMOs are just so very unique still to this day with the type of gaming experience that they
I don't know
give
about
to us,
unique,
really.
but
I
special.
absolutely love the immersion, the social interaction, the sense of exploration and adventure, all of those things.
I love the idea of a shared world. I think that's what makes MMOs really special for me. I fucking love that. I think it's great.
Yeah,
Things combined to
agreed.
something that is really unique to MMOs. One really interesting thing that he mentioned here was saying that the best platforms for players to enjoy TL on, in my opinion, would be PC and console. The value and emotion of an MMO cannot be experienced on mobile. Do keep in mind with some of these quotes that we are translating Korean into English.
Yeah,
there is
it's
some
probably a
meaning
little bit
lost
fucked.
within that, or some translations that sound a little funny. Really, I think what he's getting at here is, hey, mobile is not
No, it is. I think you can play this game on mobile.
a great platform for the type of experience that MMOs deliver, to which I wholeheartedly agree. I got nothing against the platform. People enjoy mobile games, that's fine. There have been mobile games that I have enjoyed, but by and large, I just don't find it very immersive. I really just like a lot of the restrictions that come from the smaller screen, but also just the interface and the way you interact with it, with the touchscreen and all of that.
I
All of
never
which is to
played a
say, I
mobile
feel like
game.
mobile games can be restrictive when we're talking about cross-platform things. Unless you
Yeah, I think so too. It's like certain things not happening in the game because it's a mobile game and there are restrictions for that. And actually, I have played a mobile game. I think a better way to say it is that I've never played a mobile game on mobile. Like I played Diablo Immortal and I played Tower of Fantasy, both mobile games. So yeah, I've played them before, but I've never actually played them on a mobile device. I also played Bloons too, and like that's a mobile game.
very strategically managed to make something that's very fitting for like the console or PC platform,
Yeah,
but
this
then
is
somehow
clearly a
also
PC
works
game.
on mobile. When mobile's thrown into the equation, I do feel like that tends to restrict the other platforms that those games are played on. It doesn't have to be the case, but in my experience, that has largely been the case. So for that reason, I'm excited to hear that Project TL is a PC and console first game, but it can be played on mobile, which we'll touch on later on in
Yeah.
this video.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's the
so
better
that
way of
was
doing
just
it.
basically basically the introduction of the developer blog. Now let's get into the meat of things. For the remaining 8 or so minutes, a few other developers basically took turns talking about different aspects of the game, and this was...
I thought this whole thing, how the weather is going to change the way that you're able to explore the world, I thought this was super fucking cool, man. I love
It's definitely
this.
interesting. Interesting. I
where
don't know if
things
I
really got
will like it or not.
So first, they spent some time on the open world and various systems within, saying the world, which has no boundaries, is the foundation that allows players to connect with one another. It allows for endless ways to interact. Along those same lines, it was later said, the reason why we connected the world into a single zone is that meeting players and constructing communities is the essence of an MMO. I do believe we knew this was the case, but it's good to get confirmation that this is
one
going to
big
be
shared
big
world.
Open world.
Yeah, it's going to be a seamless open world game. Like, I think that one of the big negative things about Final Fantasy XIV is the fact that you have loading screens to go from one zone to another. Like, if you compare that to WoW, there's not really that many loading screens in the game. And there are other games like New World, for example, where there's basically no loading screens at all. And I think it does create a level of immersion and openness that you can't have whenever you go into instance zone to instance zone, like in Lost Ark or Final Fantasy.
Which implies no loading screens between zones, but also it does seem like that seamlessness also applies to the dungeon experience, which is really cool. They showed a bunch of different open world gameplay in these sections, and I thought it all looked really good, not only in the scale of the environment and the visual fidelity, but also there was a lot of players, big open spaces, and a ton of verticality, which I'm really excited. I love when MMOs go deep into having multiple tiers of levels and various heights for you to climb and descend down from. I like when they do that, and they also implement...
Yeah, it gives you, it adds like a spectacle to the game and like a scope to the game where every mountain that you look at now, you think, what's on the top of that mountain? But like in a game like WoW, where like what's on the top
Breath
of the mountain,
really,
fucking nothing, because that's not the way the game's designed. It can be kind of boring.
Traversal systems that make engaging with that verticality interesting, which it does look like Throne and Liberty does look like they're going to do. But here's something that I'm really excited about. Let's talk about the dungeons. Take, for example, an underground dungeon with a separate entrance and main area. In it, there are multiple floors and spaces, but we have connected all of the spaces together. Moving immediately to the lowest floor is possible, and aid can be given or damage can be dealt to others on different floors. So here they're saying essentially that the dungeons are not going to be linear whatsoever, and that there is going to be verticality, and they showed this off in the trailer as well. It showcased a fly-through of...
This was really cool. I think this was probably the most impressive part of the entire trailer. Like, watch this shit.
A dungeon starting off outside, moving through the exterior to the inside, and then down several layers, again showing off tons of verticality, flying through a boss room, past some gates into this large open area, all seemingly with no loading screens, and several groups, large groups of players running around, walking into the dungeon, fighting PvE encounters, all of this happening simultaneously. So it does appear like at least some of the dungeons.
It's almost like just a very large elite zone from like WoW. Like, it's not really a dungeon. It's just an elite zone with bosses.
In this game are not going to be instance, and they're going to be kind of like
the classic
old school MMOs talking about back in the EverQuest days.
Because I think Ashes said they're going to try something similar. But Ashes has the PvP. Throne and Liberty, I don't think they have open world PvP.
Well, like, this is how it was. I remember whenever I played BDO, like, this is how it was. Like, you would go out, and I don't know if this is still how it is because I haven't played the game in years, but like, there weren't any instances. So like, you would just find a farming spot out in the open world, and there were these places that like had all elite mobs, and they were effectively dungeons, but they weren't dungeons because they weren't instanced. And
elite zones, basically.
You would get all the boys together and you'd go farm that.
Well, a dungeon doesn't have to be instanced. Like, the whole purpose of a dungeon is just like, is what it sounds like. It's a dungeon. So it's like its own thing, but it doesn't have to be like a loading screen.
Area.
Were just open for people to go in, and
that was
there could be groups there fighting. A boss could be engaged with. Really curious how they're going to manage respawns, I suppose, in this case. I imagine there's going to be some system of either resetting the boss, maybe by engaging with something in the environment, or just they will be on regular old mob respawn timers. It does seem like it's not just the world that's open with no loading screens between zones, but also dungeons. I just have to say, dude,
it depends on how fast the respawns are. and can you tag things with multiple groups? Like if one group tags it, does no one else get the loot from it? Like it's a very tricky balance they're gonna have to do there, and that was the whole point of having it as a separate instance. Was you don't have to factor in like players' ingenuity to glitch the system, like to find bugs.
I tell you how pumped and excited I am to see this, just
because when you have an open world, like it's just way more opportunity for cheese strats and like just more in general like balance issues.
Huge open dungeon, and like
yeah, I think it's probably gonna get griefed like fucking crazy, and it's gonna be really annoying. But I'm here for it. Like, let's see it happen. Like,
that's fine. Like players like Asmin and other like old school MMOs, like I'll play it. I don't really mind those kind of things usually, but there are cases where if it's like needed for like the main story to progress, dude, you have no idea how like New World had that crap. I don't know if it was part of the main story, but I know it was part of like a quest line where you had to kill this mob, and dude, he was just getting farmed, and it took me, I think, like it had to be at least 2 hours to finally get enough damage and to actually count as a towards my quest.
Like, let's see what's gonna happen. If it's garbage, then maybe they'll change it. Maybe I'll just play something else. I don't know.
And that's easy for a player to say, I'll just play something else. But a developer, like, that is not what you want a player to like have that option. Like, oh, I'll just play something else. Like, boom, all the money that player could have given you is now gone. And if it's like a lot of players doing it, that could kill your game.
But like a lot of open world dungeons, like this is the thing, like New World had open world dungeons, and like what do open world dungeons result in? Like 100 people sitting there AFKing at a boss, waiting for it to respawn, and then it dies in 3 seconds.
Instantly. Yep.
So like, how do you avoid having that problem? And it's like, do you avoid that by having PvP? And like, if you do have PvP and then people are killing each other for like tags on it, like how much is that going to hurt like their, some sort of karma system? Like the systems that come into these MMOs that cascade into each other are just like fucking endless levels of complexity.
With the world, the verticality that they're showing here, it looks sick. It's so cool to see the camera just go down through several layers, flying.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I said, like, that's why they have it as an instance thing for dungeons. It just makes it easier for the developers.
Past a boss fight into this huge expansive area, and you take into consideration that this game is going to have a lot of various traversal options, mostly through their system of changing into different...
I'm assuming they're going like the Guild Wars 2 route, which would be cool. Like, I like Guild Wars 2 a lot when it comes to that stuff.
Animals, which basically represent
I really like exploring the maps in Guild Wars 2.
Air mounts, and these are just basically the ways of traversing the environment that replace a traditional MMO mount system where you're summoning a horse or something to fly on or whatever. And then that in conjunction with the fact that the game has mantling, letting your character climb up onto objects that they can reach, as well as a grapple hook system, knowing all of that traversal potential with this, what they're showing off is tons of verticality. I really feel like that is something.
I think this game might hit the mark of just fundamentally being fun to play.
Yeah.
It might just be fun.
That was my thought when I saw previous things on Throne of Liberty. I was like, it looks good enough to that I know playing it, I'm going to have fun for a good amount. I don't think, based on what I'm seeing, it's ever going to be like my main game, but it's going to be like Genshin. Like, I'm going to play it until like I kind of do everything I want, and then I'll just leave the game.
To play, because...
But of course, if it's like a lot of cases where you're just, you can't really get boss kills, because there's a bunch of people just camping, that's going to like cut down the amount of playtime by a pretty good amount.
These are the ways that you can move around in the game. Hopefully that's what happens.
That is missing from a lot of MMOs that I've played in recent years. It just feels immersive to go into a game or go into a dungeon like the one that they showcased, and knowing that it just goes lower and lower and lower and lower, and you'll have fights and stuff all along the way, or there's tons of stuff that you can skip if you want. You can just completely skip certain encounters. You don't have to just go through a linear path, and they actually touch on this as well, saying by connecting the interior
But there's also a reason why they don't do that. It's because a lot of players, when you give them multiple options, they're just going to pick the most efficient route. If one route has no bosses, or a boss that, doesn't drop the loot that they're looking for, they're just going to, get the rundown to where they're skipping it. Like, they're saying it like it's innovative, but it's really not. Like, these issues have come up, and the solutions were, okay, well, let's have it as a separate instance, because New World was a perfect example on what happens with Elite Zones or dungeons. Outside dungeons is basically what New World had. And it flopped. It wasn't good. It was interesting, but then people just farmed it in like packs of hundreds of players, which was cool for like an hour or two at most, and then it grew old real quick. And then once we have multiple choices on which way to go, like most of the time, players will just figure out, okay, well, what's the most optimal, and just stick with that, thus turning it into a linear experience.
Exterior, top, and bottom of the dungeon. We hope that players can share this common spatial experience. Moreover, rather than just rushing through the fields, players can discover their own routes in three-dimensional terrain.
And this is kind of what happened in New World, is that you would have different groups of people farming different bosses. Like, how many of you guys, like, whenever the game first came out, like, you would see people that were farming, like, one group would be farming that big bear boss in Reekwater, and then there'd be another group farming the tentacle boss up ahead of that boss. And there'd be, like, 10 people in each group, and they'd just be doing their own thing. So I think that's probably how this is going to turn out.
Really cool. Generally, I'm excited.
Like that,
obviously, the major concern is the idea of huge groups swooping through dungeons, completely clearing everything quickly and ruining the experience for smaller groups or even solo players. That is a concern. That is absolutely a concern when you have this idea of non-instance dungeons. It's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of MMOs moved away from it.
Like player friction, I think, is like player friction and monetization are the two concerns that I have for this game more than anything else.
With a lot of things, there are pros and cons. Personally, if nothing else, whether or not the idea of an open dungeon, non-instance dungeon
like this
system
looks
really
incredible. I love this.
End, it's nice to see something different from, again, what most modern-day MMOs do, the instanced dungeon.
To me, I disagree with Force. I don't give a damn. Like, that'd be like saying, oh, we're going to take everyone's weapons away and you're going to fight with your fists. Oh, so refreshing because it's different. It's like, dude, that's... different does not mean it like a good thing. Like, unless they can figure out the issue on why they did it, it's just going to flop. And that's my main, like Aspen said, that's going to be like the main concern here is, did they actually figure out a solution to that? Or are they just like, well, it's different for different sake, even though it's not different? Because old school MMOs, like RuneScape and stuff, I'm pretty sure if I remember right, that was how they did it, where it was just open, to anyone. But developers learn pretty quick that's not a good system.
Dungeon experience. Okay, next up, they spent some
Players
time talking about the weather
F
system
each other
and how
at
it
any
can
point,
impact
like
the environment and players.
at the drop
have
of a
known
hat
that
for
this is going to be a thing in
incentives.
the game where, depending on the time
basically.
of day and the weather, things will change. Well, we got some more concrete examples. They said weather and environment have visual effects to augment the sense
That looks
of
really cool,
reality.
though.
This living world is all about adapting to the
I can't
environment.
wait to play this
Depending
game.
on the changes in the setting, terrain may feel different, ecosystems may undergo changes, and intriguing events can spring up.
The
And we
gameplay
saw-
almost reminds me of
Scope of
Final
them
Fantasy.
and how many inconveniences are created by having certain weather conditions. So it's like, if you...
That was my thought with the weather conditions when things got flooded. I'm like, okay, well, that seems more annoying than anything.
You have cool things that can happen during a rainstorm, or like there's a thunderstorm and you can spawn some thunder elemental and kill it. Like, that's...
Guild Wars 2 kind of does that with their open events, like world events.
Really cool. But like, for example, if you can't use fire spells at all during a rainstorm, I think this could be frustrating for people to play. So it just depends on like how restrictive the different weather effects are.
Some examples, we saw a stone quarry filling up with water during a
Yeah,
storm.
we saw
these sleeping golems waking up during sunrise.
Yep.
Plants sprouting to life when rain came in. We also saw a dungeon entrance opening up during a rainstorm as well. But on top of the environmental stuff and NPCs changing and dungeon entrances opening up, we saw how player abilities can be affected. So they talk about the fact that weather might adjust the projectile speed for an archer, but we also saw an example of a wizard's lightning skill growing stronger during a storm, changing from single target to a multi-target chain ability. Really, really cool stuff.
I think that is fucking badass. Like, that's the kind of stuff that makes the game more interesting and more compelling. Yeah, I love that.
There was a little bit of story discussion here.
I don't know how I feel about that, because honestly, I don't think I really care too much. Because that's like saying, oh yeah, if it's watery and you're playing like a warrior, you're going to be tripping a lot. You're going to randomly, just fall and stun yourself, like get knocked down. Like, how? That'd be dumb.
Here, where they said we've also spent a substantial amount of time
It's
creating
more
a world
real,
story.
it's more
Ultimately,
immersive,
the
but,
stories in an MMO are about the
I don't know, I
history
wouldn't
that
want to
you
play a
all
game like that.
create. However, it's also important to write the background saga. I gotta be honest, in pretty much every MMO, I could not care any less about the hardline narrative, the main story quests that you play through, any cutscenes that pop up. It's just not what I come to MMOs for. For me, it's more about the world building and lore that are created and the storytelling that happens while you play the game.
I've gone through and I've watched, or I've played pretty much all of the story in like Lost Ark, for example, and WoW, and I'm like
I usually only care if it's like adding to the world.
halfway through like Final Fantasy story, or at least like probably 40%, 50% through. I don't really know exactly. But I played through a lot of those. I think that playing through the story has made me enjoy the game more. Regardless of whether like you like the game or not, I felt that whenever I'm connected to the story and I know what's happening in the story, it makes the events in the game more meaningful to me.
Is what I find most immersive.
Absolutely.
That is what I find most interesting. That's just a personal thing, but yeah, they're gonna have some storytelling. I'm expecting some cutscenes in this game with some main characters and some narrative arcs. I just don't care much about it in the MMO genre in particular, but hey, for the people who do, looks like there is going to be some here. Now moving on to discussion of combat. They didn't really actually dive much into details about the combat system in terms of...
I also don't think they should try to like work really hard to make the narrative as good as something like Final Fantasy 14. Like, they're a lot more experienced. Like, do what you're good at. Like, your story doesn't have to be, like, some, like, fucking multi-level,
like,
compelling
really
narrative that's told over a 10-year period. Like, just make something simple and just go with that. There's a big dragon, we have to kill the dragon. Okay, all right, there it is.
Exactly.
It's simple.
How it functions, but more so about the weapon system. So they say combat is the backbone of MMO games, like TL's
Thank
open worlds.
fucking
Our
God.
combat system doesn't play out
True.
in a predictable way. In TL, player roles are decided by what weapon the player chooses.
Yeah, I saw
Rather than
this.
being confined to a class set
like
forth
New
by
World.
the game,
I think
players
twice
can always
the first
change
time I saw it.
weapons to suit the situation. Two different types of weapons can be combined, and changing between them allows players to maximize their strength. It also allows strategies that can cover potential
The
weaknesses.
effects of the spells are pretty cool looking.
Really enjoy this. I like both types of systems where you have hard and fast character classes, you pick the wizard or the warrior, but I have also enjoyed a lot of the various MMOs that have done this weapon type system. Some examples would be something like Elder Scrolls Online. Although they do have classes, there are also basically entire skill trees that come off of the weapons that you use. New World does something similar, even more so, because they don't have a class system. You are just picking your weapons, and those weapons determine your skills. Another great example would be Albion Online. Like with anything, there's pros and cons to the different approaches of doing class or classless combat. One of the reasons I'm excited about what they're talking about in Throne and Liberty is just primarily because it looks like they have a lot of potential skills and a lot of customization within each of the weapons. You take New World, for example. You got 3 skills when you picked a weapon. It looks like Throne and Liberty.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen with that. Because, like, yeah, that could be really cool if you had, like, all these different weapons. But is it going to be ending up more restrictive than what it actually is? That's one of my concerns whenever you have a classless game where like you have certain weapons that are just never used or not used hardly at all. Is this a weapon makes your class? It is, but you can swap around them a lot more often, so it's okay.
Will have at least 5, maybe 6. Either way, looks
Like, I think instead of New Worlds, I really wish more games would lean into Final Fantasies, where it's like classes, but like your character can be all classes. Like you can swap between classes.
like they're gonna have a lot of customization.
I think I
and there
prefer
will
that
be a
one, to be honest.
combination of utilizing different weapons together, which is good. That's the idea. You've got 2 different weapon slots that you swap between. They can either enhance each other or make up for the weaknesses of one of the weapons. More details about combat here, where they said each weapon type offers defensive actions to protect players with good timing, some sort of a block and
I think they went with WoW's thing. Like a lot of like every class now has a lot more defensive options than they used to.
or parry system will be available for every single type of weapon. And then they say through the use of several features, players can micromanage the more subtle aspects of combat. Connecting skill sets of different weapons allows players to experience the joy of combining and configuring weapons. This is the free class system.
Yeah, I think this will work pretty well if they have the weather effect system, especially whenever you have, like, I'm assuming lightning abilities and maybe like water abilities or something
You switch
like that
from
can
fire
work
to
well.
lightning.
And so you can use
Yeah.
these things together.
Become
that
a
TL is
mini
so proud
avatar.
of. We got
Very
some
cool.
details about PvP. They said we tried to come up with PvP rules that allowed players to decide whether they want to participate or not. Most of
Good.
TL's fields are safe zones. Once competitions like regional events or boss raids begin, certain fields allow combat to occur. Players can proactively choose to participate or not. In whatever area a player is in, they can check what events and competitions are planned, allowing strategic
That's
gameplay
cool.
and ensuring that there is no chance for players to fall into unexpected
I mean, it's like
PvP
really big
situations.
battles, so it's
This-
hard to say
I think
how
that's
it's
probably
gonna
a good
play.
thing to just like make certain
gonna lag.
zones PvP only for certain times based off of what's going on, rather than just having them always have PvP on all of the time, which could make it to where like certain areas are just going to be camped constantly.
Yeah.
Is pretty clearly just they are going to broadcast if a zone is PvP enabled or not.
Yeah.
They will tell you ahead of time when it will become PvP enabled, and this will allow you to decide if you want to engage in PvP or if you want to leave the area and come back once the PvP conflict is over. While I do like when games just have areas that are open PvP all the time, I appreciate that there is a large percentage of the player base of a lot of MMOs that doesn't want to engage in PvP, that doesn't want to get steamrolled by large groups of players or outgeared or outleveled, and they want to choose when they can PvP.
And to be fair, who does? Like, who wants to get steamrolled? Like, you want to be a part of the steamroll, but you don't want to be steamrolled.
And ultimately, probably, this is probably best for the health of
Is that
any
an
MMO,
orange?
letting
Like, what
players
the heck was
choose,
that?
giving them the option. If they want to engage in the system, they can. If they want to avoid it and do something else, they can as well.
I think this is a pretty healthy medium where like you do have open world content that has PvP in it, but
Yeah.
players can choose to opt in or not. I think that any time that you force a player into PvP that doesn't want to do PvP, that's not going to be fun for them. I don't think anybody does that and then they think to themselves, wow, that was really fun. Maybe I'll do it again. I think that whenever you make players
The only time that's the case is if they somehow join like a big group that's hunting down smaller groups or solo players. It's like, oh, that was kind of fun because you weren't the one being hunted.
do something they don't want to do that they wouldn't normally do, that generally is a bad thing. And I think that's the same thing with like different systems, like for example in WoW, where like they go and they like make it to where you have to do Torghast, or like, oh, you have to do this because like there's all
Yeah.
these rewards attached to it and shit like that. Yeah.
Now, beyond the open world PvP with these zone events, there's also going to be guild war.
I think also like just pause again. I think it becomes even more the case whenever a game is pay to win, which this
Oh,
game
yeah,
could be,
absolutely.
even if it's on a soft level of pay to win. Because if somebody else has better gear than you and they have advantages
It's
that
like
they
Lost
paid for,
Ark,
and then
man.
they're killing you in the
There's
game
no way
because
to
of
play
that,
that.
this is just not going to be a good time for people.
Of this, they said, in TL's fields, there are objects which can be maintained by guilds only. The Blessing Stone and the Dimension Stone. The two stones together are called the Possession Stones. The acquisition of the Possession Stones allows for enhanced guild capabilities as well as procurement of necessary raw materials. In order to get the stones, guilds will fight. So there's going to be guild battles. You're fighting for possession of these stones, probably some sort of a zone control thing where you got to stand by the stone, maybe interact with it, and then gain possession after a set amount of time of defending it. So it's just the guild conquest system, basically.
Yeah, it's basically like node control. It's not that complicated. Sure, that's fine.
Sounds pretty interesting, especially with
Yeah.
combined with some of the various castle siege footage that we've seen. Really cool, large number of players.
Yeah,
all
these
sorts
are great.
Of siege equipment, and including these massive stone giants that players can get control of. This looks pretty interesting. Okay, so next up is platforms. Now, remember at the top they mentioned the developer talked about how the best way to experience the game was on PC or console, but it is going to be playable on phones as well. They mentioned the TL offers a unique UI.
I think that more games are going to be playable on mobile going forward, because
just
like now
makes
what you're
sense.
seeing, a lot of the innovations, especially like this is something that's very, very important with like
That's where
Unreal
more
5.
I mean, it's been proven that's where more and more people are playing their games is on mobile. I mean, I don't think it's a case where it's like PC players going to mobile, but I think people who never bothered with games are playing games on their mobile.
Is one of the biggest things that Unreal 5 adds.
And if you
is
can tap into that
optimization.
player base, it's
So the more that optimization becomes a focus in game development, the more games will be possible to be
On
played. It
phones.
will be possible
Yeah.
to play them on mobile.
yeah. But as I was saying, like the more you tap into that mobile market, like it's like as a company, if it's possible and you're not doing it, you're kind of an idiot.
And UX experience depending on what type of device.
I mean, I'm not
PC
gonna play
have
this
their
shit
own
on mobile.
interface,
Fuck that.
Console has its own interface, but also this game can be
Yeah.
played by streaming on
Unless there's like things you can do on mobile, like maybe like gathering, crafting kind of stuff, then maybe.
mobile. So I'm a little confused here as to whether or not this is going to be a mobile first game with that in mind. Although because they mention it can be played through streaming on mobile, this makes me think that it's just going to be this is an alternate way to play a PC and console first game rather than being a mobile
That
first
was a
game.
weird looking
It's also getting
I think
cosmetic
that's
head.
fine. Like, I think it's fine to be able to play the game on mobile and go out and do a few dailies and stuff. And
Yeah.
also, if the game is bad to play on mobile, then who gives a fuck? I think the only problem that people have with mobile games is they think mobile games are going to force a certain type of monetization, or they're going to make the game less robust and less complex because it needs to adhere to mobile standards.
That or the combat's gonna feel like janky as hell because it has to go by what you can do on a phone.
So
versus
people
an
actually don't
actual
have a problem
controller
really with the
or
game
mouse and
being on
keyboard.
mobile. They have a problem with the implications of the game being on mobile.
Yep.
ported to PC and consoles. I hope that's the case anyways, because like I said earlier, I do feel like a lot of times if mobile is the first way that a game is, the first consideration in a game's development and its design, I think it can really hamstring it, or has the potential to hamstring it. We'll just have to see what ends up happening with Throne and Liberty. Some other interesting stuff in the final section, they just touch on like the game's visual fidelity. You know, they say it looks good, and yeah, I think it looks pretty good, especially
Yeah, it looks
for the
great.
number of players. They touch on customization, character customization, the facial expression system, and the fact that you can upload your photos to make a character look like your face. No, thank you. Not no.
Like
no,
everything
thank
I've
you,
seen
but
on
I
there
will 100%
makes me want to play this
do
game.
that.
if you want to do that. And
Yes,
then also
I'm
that the game will
100% gonna do
support,
this.
quote, countless numbers
Wait,
of
what'd he
players
say?
can make a character look like your face. No, thank you. Not no, thank you, but
I
great.
will 100% do that.
If you want to do that. And
Yes,
then
I'm
also that the game will
100% gonna do
support,
this.
quote, countless numbers of players concurrently, and they've spent a tremendous amount of time on optimization. They then said, we promise that the game will run as smoothly as possible. And I will admit, although early on optimization was a big concern, we saw some really poor frame rates in some early footage. A lot of what they've showed recently has had a ton of players on frame, and it all looks
Yep, the
pretty smooth. So
optimization
it
to
does
me is
seem
like-
the game has gotten better in this sense. Okay, so that is
I think
one of
that's
the least
something that will get
worrying
better over
things,
time
so.
as well.
Yeah.
Like optimization, I'm not that worried about it with how many people they're showing in sieges, etc. Because they wouldn't plan the game. I mean, like, fucking maybe they are, and I'm wrong about this. But it seems to me like you wouldn't plan a game to have like 50v50, 100v100 sieges.
I mean, New World. Like, let's not jinx this.
If it's so badly optimized.
The recent director's preview video, there was a lot of really
think
cool
you already
stuff in
forgot
here.
about
Some
New
of
World.
it was retreading information we already knew, but there was a lot of new details, and if nothing else, we saw a lot of new interesting footage, a lot of gameplay footage, a lot of different examples of the things that they've talked about, and it has me pretty excited. I think this is looking pretty darn good. Now, I did cover this video a few months back, and since then there was also actually one other update. This came in the form of a closed beta testing highlight video where they showed a few
we watched
interesting
this.
things. They showcased character creator, looks to have the usual
Yeah.
amount of depth as many.
The character creator is fine. It actually is pretty good.
Korean MMOs,
Above
which is
average,
to say
that's
quite
for
a
sure.
lot of depth, quite a lot of customization options. We saw some shots of the hybrid action combat system.
That looks
By my
so
guesstimate,
cool.
it just looks like they're going
Seriously.
with the soft lock system, similar
That's like
to
Elden
what
Ring
Elder
level of
Scrolls
cool.
Online uses. We saw some animal transform.
I feel like in general, a soft lock system is probably the best for MMOs going forward. Is to have where you can lock on to a target for like your basic attacks, but in order to do like actual like skill shot attacks, you have to aim the attacks themselves.
Like I
So
mentioned
it's like an amalgamate. It's like a combination between like tab targeting and action combat.
Yeah.
earlier, this is just this game's mount replacement. There was a bunch of footage of PvE and PvP gameplay, specifically the PvP
At least with the
section
current
showed a
technology
bunch
we
of
have,
Castle
like
Siege.
it's
And one thing
the
that really stuck out to me
optimal.
the most in all of this was just the sheer scale of players. Like, by my count,
Yeah.
there's got to be at least 100 players on screen in a few of these clips, and that is awesome to see. It seems like they're utilizing some sort of shadow or template characters to help with performance, basically like simple versions of character classes with
This
fewer
is what
details and
Ashes of
effects
Creation is
showing
gonna
up
do
on
too.
screen once you reach a certain number threshold. But regardless, lots of bodies on screen, lots of action, lots of effects going off. It all looks pretty cool, and I really like the scale. There are
One thing that I'm concerned about with this game is the server size. I'm worried that like there's going to be 2 or 3 big servers and there's going to be 10 servers or 20 servers, and the rest of them, the experience you have is going to be really diminished. I think that people, whenever you play on a dead server in an MMO, there is nothing more depressing than playing on a dead server. And I'm so worried that's what's going to happen with this game. And that's what happened with Tower of Fantasy and New World. And I think also to a lesser extent Lost Ark, is that a lot of these games kind of just had these really big servers, and then the popularity for the game waned off, and you don't have server transfers yet, so you're just fucked.
some odd things going on that I want to mention with this game. I've liked what
Tower
they've
of
talked about
Fantasy,
and what they've
that's
shown.
what happened to me.
I'm really
Like my
curious
friends
if
played
they're
it on a different
view-botting,
server,
though, and
which sucked.
I don't
Yeah, I
say
saw
that
his tweet
lightly,
about
but
this.
basically, looking at the numbers of a lot of their videos, something just seems off. So, for example, the highlight dev video that they just put out has 750,000 views. It might be over 800,000 or 900,000 by the time this recording gets finished, but only a few hundred engagements.
I think the reason why this happens, like a logical reason why this could happen, is that they have this video embedded on their website. And every view on the website embed
I was thinking
counts as a
botting,
view
but
on
I was like,
YouTube,
wait a minute, no,
but
they could
being
do
able to
embedding.
like and comment on a video is not possible through the website embed. That's probably what happened. I find it unlikely that they're actually paying for view bots, but it's possible. I mean, stranger things have happened.
200 or 300 likes and dislikes and 39 comments. That is far, 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 far below the engagement numbers that you should have.
No,
with
there's clearly something that happened.
Over 750,000 views. Like, I don't know, it's just really disproportionate and it feels a little fishy. I don't want to accuse them of anything. I just should point out that the views to engagement are, as someone who has been on this platform for 12 years now, they are way off.
It is beyond the normal scope. It is like you
doesn't
could
make
take
sense.
1,000 videos.
Especially with the kind of content it is. It makes absolutely no sense on why there isn't more engagement on it. The like and dislike ratio, like that's whatever, but like the people talking about it in the comment section.
With that amount of views, and not a single one of them would have that low of an engagement ratio. Like 1,000 videos. So yeah, it's massively suspicious.
The mark, it just doesn't really make sense. I'll just assume it has to do with video embedding.
Yeah,
and that's the answer.
That's the
or
best
they're
answer I can
who
give.
knows? So as of now, Throne and Liberty is scheduled to release in the first half of 2023. It is coming to PC as well as console. I suspect we will get some beta testing prior to the actual release. As time goes on and we see more of this game, while I am still certainly skeptical, especially because of who is developing and publishing the game, and the monetization that is almost certainly going to be very aggressive, very predatory, and as close to pay to win as you can get, if not outright pay to win, at the very least, almost certainly very, very full of.
Which is weird because it's like they've gotten a little better with some of their other games, like MapleStory, for example. But like, yeah, I mean, it's going to be pay to win to some degree or another. It will be pay to win. I don't think anyone's arguing that point.
pay to convenience. Even with those
I
things,
feel like in a lot of ways, pay for convenience is as bad as pay to win. I mean,
I think it's worse. You can ignore pay to win as long as it's not a competitive game. You cannot ignore pay to convenience.
and obviously, like everything exists on a spectrum. But to me, like whenever you have the game that has like these intentional fucking hurdles that you have to pay money to.
And by ignore, I mean like not caring if the person next to you dropped 10K and, you know, they're like months ahead of you in progression. Because to me, I don't really care about that stuff. Like, I don't care. Like, it's not that I don't care exactly. It's more like if I'm having fun with the game, that's what's going to matter most. And if I feel like I'm grinding and grinding and grinding, and I'm not really making much progress, that's not fun. So that's, you know, like the pay to win part isn't going to matter to me. It's if they make it really grindy for me. So the convenience part is what's going to kill it.
To remove the hurdles. Oh my god. And again, like this is all
Oh yeah, like small inventory fatigue, like it's so dumb. Or auto loot. Like you have to buy a pet to auto loot.
speculation. We don't know any of this. We have no idea.
Yeah.
But it's just based off of prior experience.
Exactly.
The more I see, the better this game looks. If nothing else, I'm hoping for a fun gameplay experience.
And it also, like, I want to add a little bit to that, is that, like, for example, with Lost Ark, what I don't like is how you can pay to, like, autocomplete Una's tasks and stuff like that. I think that's stupid. I do it every day, but I think it's stupid that you can do it. And I think the same thing is true whenever you can, like, buy levels and everything like that. I am okay with, like, one-time purchases, especially if it's a free game, like PoE has, like stash tabs. You buy a currency stash tab, and that stash tab exists in perpetuity, and it never really becomes outdated. So in the same way that you can do that, I'm okay with it. And I think BDO had certain costumes that you could wear that would give you like 10% more experience and some other stuff as well. I think that's kind of okay because you don't need to continuously buy them. But the problem is whenever you have these like daily or weekly activities that you can spend convenience cash in order to bypass. Does that make sense? And again, this is all a spectrum. So it depends on like what these numbers really look like and what the game really is.
Yeah.
To get even just a few weeks or a month out of the game and just to explore a new world, enjoy some new systems. This open world with all of these players and these traversal systems and these open dungeons, dude, it looks really cool.
I just want to play a game.
I'm pretty pumped to explore and check it out. As always, we will navigate the monetization like we have to do with so many modern games, but especially live service games and MMOs. We will navigate it. We will deal with it. We will complain about it once we get more details because we should continue to push back against it, even if it is shoveling against the tide and ultimately will have no effect because of the sheer number of people who just don't think about it and just don't care and are happy to spend. And hey, I'm happy to spend some money if I enjoy the game. I wish these games weren't so heavily monetized. It is the world that we live in.
I think that the problem with games like this is the open-ended nature of spending money. The open-ended nature of buying gold in Lost Ark and then buying gold to hone in Lost Ark. The open-ended nature of buying WoW tokens in WoW. The issue is not that there are microtransactions in the game. The issue is that you can continuously use these microtransactions and become more powerful in a seemingly uncapped way. Or a functionally uncapped way for like 99.99% of the audience.
And barring just not playing my favorite genre of games, which is live service games and MMOs, there's not much more I can do than complain. Because I still want to play these games.
Yeah.
Why is it? I'm so sick of the monetization. I mean, I'm sick of talking about it. I just want to play and enjoy fun games.
Yeah, I kind of am too, honestly. Let me link you guys the video.
Complain about it. Hey, it makes for good content too.
Yeah, it sure does.
Get ready for the why you should be concerned about Throne and Liberty video. It'll happen at some point. I promise you.
Yeah.
All right, that's gonna do it for today. I'm excited about this game. I am. Hoping it turns out great. We'll see you next.
Yeah, I think everything we've seen on it probably will be a really good game, as long as like you can accept whatever monetization it comes with. It's like Lost Ark to a degree, but at the same time, that is the reason why I quit Lost Ark, was the grind became too much. And as long as Throne of Liberty doesn't take it to that degree, Like I don't see why I wouldn't really get into the game.
Next time. Thanks for watching.
Okay, yep, that sounds just about right. Let me go back.
Because I play games that have pay to win, and it usually doesn't bother me as long as it doesn't feel like I have to engage in that system to get enjoyment out of the game.
Over,
For
I'll
better or
pull
worse.
this up and read some comments on it. So, yeah, any Elden Ring content today depends on how fast we clear Barrel Shaza and how far we get, but we're going to find that out in just a little bit. I'm going to read some comments about this first. Non-instance dungeons, as nice as it sounds, will probably end up being played in a similar fashion like chest runs in New World. Exactly, yes. And again, this stuff, it always depends on the way that it's balanced and how it's designed.
That's what I said. Like,
that's the only thing that really matters. Everything else is all a footnote.
Unless they know how to fix that problem,
good
it's going to be hard.
Can exist inside of a really bad game, and a really bad system can exist inside of a really good game. So we're going to have to wait and see exactly what these things actually look like.
Yep. Really cool video. Like, man, I really can't wait for some of these games like Wayfinder and Throne of Liberty. And of course, Ashes. Like, I don't know if they come out, and I don't think Ashes will be 2023, but if it does, like 2023 is going to be like a really good year for MMOs. So, all right, I think that's all I'm going to do today, just because I'm honestly a bit tired. So, yeah, pretty fun videos. All right, see you.